go then. Live fast, die young.
Hello and welcome to another retro review. Sometimes we call it Chew the Fat, depends what I'm talking about. Getting a new intro sequence for that done. Thank you, Gary from Australia, Outcast Australia. In fact, I know he's working on it for me already. So today I'm going to be talking about all things Walter Hill. I'm going to be doing like a lot more stuff very regularly on the Outcast Creative channel. Going to be doing one of these streams most Saturdays unless I'm out. Usually either 9 p.m. GMT, which is 4 p.m. East Coast time, or 10 p.m. So either 4 or 5 p.m. East Coast time. God knows what that is in Los Angeles, but I'm sure you can work it out. And I'm also doing a weekly roundup every Wednesday, unless I'm out, roughly around 9 p.m. UK time. So again, it's about 4 p.m. East Coast time. And I'll just be talking about all the shows and films that I've watched that week. Now, some of them will be new things. Like at the minute, I'm watching the Wu-Tang Clan saga. I'm watching Black Mafia Family. I'm watching the latest season of Family Guy. I'm watching the latest season of South Park. And I'm also watching quite a few of the documentaries on Netflix. So I could be covering a whole range of stuff on there. So don't forget to like and subscribe and follow. And there'll be some other things on top of that. And of course, I'll be doing creative industry interviews. And we got more of those coming our way very soon. Talking to a couple of very interesting people about coming on the channel. Just trying to sort out some dates and times. But as you know, I always like to have a co-host because there's nothing more than me talking for an hour to send someone to sleep. So it's always good if there's a couple of us on that can send you to sleep. And for the first time, I have got another relatively new YouTuber. And I thought it would be really good to have someone else on who's just started their channel. Is just getting going. And that is Copa Catania, or as I'm going to call him, Copa Cabana, because it's easier for me to remember. Here he is, all the way from the United States of America, or have I got that wrong? Are you actually Canadian?
No, I'm definitely not Canadian. I like freedom.
Whoa, we're getting political already, and we've barely even started. Okay, well, listen, it's great to have you on. I'm going to call you Copa for short, if that's acceptable.
That's completely acceptable, and thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And how I met Copa actually is he wrote to me because he's the president of the Avatar fan club. It's his favorite film of all time, and we had some great discussions about that, and look forward to doing a stream soon.
How
and,
dare you, sir? How dare you?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Avatar. Copa not so much. Just to clear that up.
No, I can't wait to discuss that one with you.
A little bit of banter. But I will say that when I went back to watch the second one a second time, and it really jarred the second time. I mean, I like the world, you see. I like the world of Avatar. So, but we won't go there now because that's a whole
about to start.
And
I was about to start.
Yeah, we're already. What we're going to talk about today is a really interesting film called Southern Comfort, which is one of the. It's not by no means the first, because this director has been going since the 70s, but it's one of the earlier films of Walter Hill, who can be a bit hit and miss, but he's certainly done several of my favorite films. Some of the films of his that I've really liked, other people haven't. And this is Southern Comfort. We've got a little picture of the cast here. And it didn't get much of a cinema release in the UK. It was only released, I think, in the West End of London in 81. It had, I believe, an 18 certificate. Might have even been certificate X back in the UK in those days, which was a bit of a kiss of doom. Because if you got an 18 certificate, it meant your audience was very limited, and your film was rarely going to make big box office. One of the exceptions to that would have been Ridley Scott's Alien. Southern Comfort has got a fantastic cast of a lot of very well-known faces, and is about a group of National Guard soldiers and National Guard of Louisiana. They get lost on a military exercise. They piss off some locals, and a lot of bad shit happens. And I think that's a sort of a brief summary of the movie there. I have been to where they shot it and identified one of the stretches of water where the filming took place, and here it is. And I don't know which part of the states you're from, Copa, but this is right near the Texas border.
Yeah. So I'm originally from California, but I moved to Georgia, so I drove through this.
Right.
Yeah.
Presumably after the bridge was constructed and not before.
Right. No. Yeah, we didn't use canoes to go across the bayou there.
Yeah.
Now, when you visited, was it humid out for you? Was it middle of summer or?
Well, I went to Texas. In fact, I went to Texas last summer, and it was very hot. But I didn't get as far as this. This is on Google Earth.
Uh-huh.
But I went and had a look. Did a lot of research, and identified where the locations were, and this was the end of the particular lake that they filmed. And of course, back then, there wasn't as many roads. There certainly wasn't as many buildings, and it was a very, very different place. We can come back to that in a minute. What I'm interested to know, because we're probably of a similar age, you might be a bit younger than me. Most people are. Look, all your clan is here today, so we're just going to say hello to a few people.
Yeah. Speaking of Wu-Tang Clan, they're all here.
Yeah, Jana Catania.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this movie. I'm excited to hear about it. Well, it's a good film. It's it's not a comfortable watch, and I've watched it again today for the first time in quite a long time. Now we've got Sasquatch in, so there's actually a Yeti on watching the channel.
Ooh, those are fighting words between the Yetis and the Sasquatches.
Yeah. And I'm gonna suggest this might be a relation of yours also. So yeah, Clan Catania is definitely in the house. Got one of my moderators in, Josh, who's also oh, you're not that old, Josh, bless you. Yeah, he's very young, wee whippersnapper is Josh. He's another one.
The whippersnappers.
Yeah, he's another one of the moderators on the Drinkers channel, and a nice chat. We've got a mods room. We've got a mods room on Twitter, and the amount of back and forth in that room when Drinker is streaming in order to control the crazies is
right. Yeah, I think I'm one of those crazies that you've tried to control once or twice.
I've only kicked out. I think I've only kicked out one person, maybe two, from Drinker's channel. Everybody else has got about 20 scores on that.
Really?
So Abomination AJ. Well, you know,
Abomination. What up?
To have some people come in. Anyway, well, look, guys, those people that are watching, thanks very much for coming in. There's usually going to be a stream like this every Saturday. And I'm also going to be popping on Copa's channel, I think, as well. He's going to be doing some live streams, and I'm going to be co-hosting some of those. And quite happy to do that if he'll have me on. Maybe only have me once and then never again, but we'll see. So,
well, the feeling might be mutual by the end of this.
We'll see. We've got great banter going already. Fantastic. This is what happens when you put a Brit and a Yank together. What could go wrong? So,
everything, especially when they're drinking.
So what I want to know, I didn't bring in enough alcohol. Anyway, what I want to know is, where and how did you first see the film? Because I've got my little story about that, and I'm going to use my 9-line timer of doom so that we don't segue for too long. So this is the maximum length of time that your answer can be.
So how long do I have?
Away you go. Well, a couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, so I would say that I became a Walter Hill fan around 48 Hours because Eddie Murphy was a big influence in my house. We were all, Eddie Murphy was one of those people who we would get my brother and I would get his videotapes and kind of watch it so mom wouldn't know we were watching it, or dad. but we're watching this vulgar stuff. So 48 Hours was a big thing. And then as I grew older and knew I was going to be a filmmaker and a writer and stuff like that, I started watching more Walter Hill stuff. And of course, the big one was The Warriors.
Mm.
And then I realized that he wrote Alien. So I wanted to go backtrack a little bit and just kind of go through his filmography from the start. So, he did
He co-wrote Alien. He didn't write
Yeah,
it on his own. Dan O'Bannon wasn't he the main writer on that? I think?
Dan O'Bannon, I think, wrote the story, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he did a story and a draft. And then I think some other
Walter
people came in and
Walter Hill has a draft, and if I am to be blunt about it, Walter Hill's draft versus Dan O'Bannon's draft is a night and day knockout punch. The way Walter Hill wrote his draft of Alien is striking. He can write maybe one or two words, and you get a visual of what he's trying to express in that scene. He opens up the screenplay exactly how the movie opens up, but he'll just write something like interior corridor, dark, lonely, cold, and you immediately dark, lonely, cold used. And that's all he says. He doesn't have any kind of conjunctions or anything to fill that nonsense up with. He just says dark, lonely, cold used. And you go, I understand. I see that now. And he continues with that screenplay, just the way he opens it. He continues with the screenplay. I mean, he just used it's almost like he writes in key words, and that's it.
yeah.
And you feel that void.
Brevity is key when it comes to writing a good screenplay. But you've got a minute and a half left. So
Okay.
We direct you to the. How did you see Southern Comfort? Was it on video?
Right. So yeah, it was on DVD because I rented it from Netflix. I was going through Walter Hill's filmography. I went from Warriors to The Long Riders, and then right after The Long Riders is this one, Southern Comfort, and I was just wowed by everything about this film, and I'm shocked that it's not as popular as it should be. So that's how I came across it.
So you rented it on DVD. So you saw it quite late.
Yeah, I saw it quite late.
Right. So the order in which I saw Walter Hill's early work would have been Warriors first, which was going to be shown at the school movie club. Then this religious nightmare mother of one of the kids phoned in and complained it was blasphemous and that we were not allowed to watch the Warriors. So we all turned up expecting to see the Warriors and got to watch the Champ instead.
Really?
Yeah, which was all right, but wasn't the Warriors. Anyway,
yeah.
Then immediately, having discovered it was on video and having discovered that Paul Wilkins was the one kid in our year, not in my class. There was 30 kids per class. There were 6 classes, 180 kids. There's one kid had a video recorder because they were like really expensive back in the day, and only the rich kids had them. And Paul actually did a speech in front of a load of friends of mine once, and he said mine and Lance's friendship began with, "Hey, I hear you've got a video." And and one of the first films we rented out was The Warriors, and I saw 48 Hours around the same time in Denmark with my dad when I was of no way legal age to go in and see that film. With it was a double bill with that film with Gene Hackman and Nick Nolte. So it was like a Nick Nolte double bill. The one where Nick Nolte's a reporter and he photographs Gene Hackman getting killed. Under Fire. I think it's called Under Fire.
Yeah.
And what a great double bill for a kid of 12 years old to see at the cinema. 48 Hours and Under Fire, right?
And you're in Denmark. What?
Yeah. And we were the only people in the cinema. It was a really small town, small cinema. And I'll never forget that there was a flower pot. I would never sit here
and think, oh, yeah, Eddie Murphy movies are playing in Denmark. I mean, it's just a weird thing to think of when you're
and it wasn't and it wasn't dubbed. They had Danish subtitles, but it wasn't dubbed, thank God. Otherwise, I would have been sitting there going, "Dad, what are they saying?" Because my Danish is pretty limited. And then I remember that, again, me and Paul became firm friends, and every Saturday we would rent out a couple of videos, and there was a stand for Southern Comfort, and it said on the top of it, "From the director of The Warriors," this kind of and it was in the window. And I said, well, we got to see
Yeah.
that. But it was an 18. So the video shop were a bit lenient with us because I was really tall. I was like 6 foot tall. So I'd sort of go in and go, yeah, I'd like to get Southern Comfort, please. And trying to sound old. And they must have thought I was absolutely ridiculous. And Jane has just said, I've got some cool stuff in the background. We'll talk about that in a bit. So that's how we ended up renting Southern Comfort. And Paul's mum, who used to make feasts of chips for us, all this unhealthy, great food, she'd turn up halfway through one of our movies with a big plate of food. But we always had to make sure if we were watching an 18, that like wasn't the scene where, you know, Robert McGinty's making out with some woman or whatever. Right. And actually his dad popped around and said, oh, this looks good. Yeah, we were like, yeah. It's not an 18, is it? No. It's a 15 or AA or whatever. So that's how I saw Southern Comfort. And I'll tell you, when I first watched it, I wasn't that keen on it because I was a kid. And it was
I can see
grim,
that.
It was a very grim. Well, it is a very grim film. It's not an easy watch.
Well, I mean, the atmosphere just crushes you, even as an audience member. That Louisiana Bayou, the way Walter Hill shot it with those characters, you almost feel swampy and wet as well by the end of that film. Yeah, and cold.
I don't know if you noticed, but so I mean, the talk about the film a little bit. We'll get onto the cast in a bit, but the director of photography is Andrew Laszlo, who also shot The Warriors. Mm-hmm. He did Streets of Fire with Walter Hill as well, which is another one of my favorite Walter Hill movies, which I also have the Blu-ray of here. So there's Southern Comfort. Southern Comfort on Blu-ray, by the way, really hard to get hold of. I had to get this second hand. So it's not easy to get hold of. And Streets of Fire. And they've both got quite good little documentaries on them. But Andrew Laszlo shot with Walter Hill quite a bit. And the last film he shot was Newsies with Christian Bale. But one of the first things I noticed when I rewatched the film is that despite the fact that this is almost like a jungle, this swamp, there's almost no green in the color palette. The only green in the color palette is on the soldiers with the khaki. And you've got one bit, I don't know if you remember the shot, but Keith Carradine comes up and he looks at a red leaf on a plant. And that's quite near the beginning. And that's like the only time there's any color in this. It's all gray and brown and, you know, very dull tones to, like you said, to make you feel cold.
Yeah, it's almost like even in the post-production process, they stripped maybe 30% of the color out of it just to make sure that you get that cold feeling. And coming from the States here, when you think of Louisiana swamp, you don't think cold, but I have to say that when you finish this film, you feel cold. I mean, they really do a wonderful job stripping color. I can only think of one other time you see the color green other than the heroes, or if you want to call them heroes, that we follow is with the trucks and the helicopter.
Yeah.
And that's about it, because obviously this is winter. So all the trees are stripped of their leaves, but yet you still feel that enclosed, claustrophobic feeling, right?
Yeah. No, it's very well shot. It was filmed over 55 days. I couldn't believe that they filmed it in the winter. They started the shoot 2 weeks before Christmas, and then they shot for 3 weeks in January. And you know, I mean, it's to the Texas border, so it's not the coldest part of the States. But even so, the actors were wearing diving suits under their combat fatigues, and you can actually see them briefly on the neckline when they do the scene where they fall out the canoes. Mm-hmm. So they're in a couple of shots. Now that I knew to look for them, because I have a director friend called Keith Gordon. I don't know if you're familiar with Keith's work at all. He played Arnie in the movie Christine.
Oh, okay.
And he did a great little World War II movie called A Midnight Clear with Ethan Hawke.
I do remember that movie.
It's a great film, and we need to do a stream about that film at some point because
Okay.
Keith told me everything about how they shot it. He was my mentor for a while, and all of his actors were wearing scuba gear under their combat fatigues, and they were filming in real snow too. So
Mhm.
you're going to be putting your actors in the water on a fairly regular basis. I can tell you now, as a director, probably best to make them as comfortable as possible so they don't moan too much. And Walter Hill says in the interview that the actors didn't give him a hard time, and the shoot was really, really, really difficult.
I was about to say, could you imagine? Because I looked it up, and it was 55. It was a 55-day shoot,
Yeah.
and could you imagine the actors being in that swamp every day for 55 days, wet, cold? Because yes, granted, you're in the part of the states that is not normally known as for being cold, but it
Mm.
does get cold in that Houston, Texas, Louisiana border area. It does get down into the 40s, maybe mid 40s, maybe 50s, but it's still cold to a human being who's wet. And then to do that for 55 days. Now, I would also like you to imagine what it's like to be the camera operator. Like, can you
Yeah.
imagine the camera operator with 100 pounds of gear on his
Yeah.
back in the middle of the Louisiana swamp?
And Walter Hill said that the biggest problem they had, and this is predominantly the area that they shot in. Again, this is Google Earth,
Mhm.
very, very helpful. Um, he said that they could never get the tripods to stay level because if they, first of all, they tried putting the tripods on these kind of big pontoons, but that didn't work because the crews had to stand up, so you couldn't keep them steady so that they would rock.
Right.
And they tried putting crews in the water to hold them, but that didn't work because the crews found themselves sinking because the mud floor was, it's soft at the bottom. So then
Right.
they got really big tripods, put cameras on sticks, put them in the water, but then they would still sink. They would be filming and one side would be going like that. So they'd put like bits of wood under them. So if they started sinking, they could kind of keep the camera level. And it just sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, I just don't understand how they even got it shot in 55 days. Like, I
Yeah.
rewatched it yesterday when I knew I was going to do the stream, and I thought to myself while watching it, I was like, I can't believe they got this done in 55 days. This seems like at least 100-day plus shoot just because you're dealing with a lot of water. And the
Yeah.
fact that if you watch the show, the camera doesn't shake or wobble at all like it is on a canoe or water. I was looking for that this time around.
Yeah.
So that's good information. So now, did they put planks of wood on the floor of the bayou and then stand the sticks on that plank of wood?
No. Just they went in and they had like the things that fishermen wear, the big things they step into, like those rubber suits.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The crew were wearing those, and so they went into the water in the end, and I think some stuff was shot handheld on the shoulder. And you're talking, this is in the days when cameras were super heavy. So a couple of things I noticed. I don't know if you picked up on this. So there's a scene. I'm not going to try and spoil it for too many people, so we won't do too much in the way of hard spoilers. But suffice to say, some people live, some people don't, and I guess the fun of the journey is seeing who survives. But
Yeah.
there's a scene where trees start falling down in the movie, and I noticed every tree that fell down seemed different and not indigenous to that. If you look, they're pine trees.
Yeah, I was about to say they were pine trees.
Yeah, but every time you see a shot of the bayou, there's no pine trees in it.
No.
And I mean, I have a couple of issues with the film. I like it. It's and it's not dissimilar to several films that have followed since. It's got a very similar mold to Predator, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Group of slightly antagonistic people thrown into a situation, although those people are very professional and kind of know their shit. Whereas these
Right.
guys are weekend warriors and some of them are playing at soldiers. But the script's very clever at introducing us to all those.
You know who they remind me of? You've obviously seen First Blood, Rambo First Blood.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they remind me of the ragtag group of National Guard that's trying to kill Rambo when he's hiding in the cave.
Yeah.
That's what they remind me of.
Yeah.
If this was anything different but a drama,
Yeah.
if this was a comedy, this would be that ragtag group of people trying to kill Rambo.
Yeah. Well, let's go through the cast and then we'll come on to the story a little bit. Because I mean, one of the reasons that the film works, I think, is because of the cast that they've got. It's quite funny when you look at some of the alternative titles like Commando Bravo.
No.
And in Iran, this was edited to make it look like the film was set in Vietnam. and honestly,
No
true story. Yeah, they completely re-edited the film and made it look like it was shot in or tried to make it look like these were guys that were in a swamp in Vietnam and they were being attacked by the Viet Cong.
Now,
so,
I know Walter Hill hates using the Vietnam allegory reference, but do you find that even though he says that, even though Walter Hill says, hey, this is not an allegory of Vietnam, do you still find yourself going, this is totally an allegory for Vietnam?
I think it's closer to the American West and the cavalry just coming across and trashing Indian settlements. That's what it reminded me of.
Okay. That would make a lot more sense, especially with Walter Hill.
Because Walter Hill says every film is a Western, and certainly that's very true of all of his films. So I don't know if you've seen the interview with him, but again, he said this came up on set and on day one, and he said, look, you're going to have lots of people coming up to you saying it's an allegory of Vietnam, and the answer to that question is there is no answer. And if I catch any of you playing allegories to Vietnam on set with your characters, that will be your last day of shooting. He actually said that to the cast on the first day. And he said you'll be fired. So I was pretty surprised to hear that. I thought that's pretty steep.
Well, it's just like with Kubrick. Someone came up to Kubrick for 2001 and they asked Kubrick, what is 2001 about? And he refuses every time he was ever asked that to answer that question. So I understand Walter Hill saying, if you ever bring up Vietnam during this shoot or when someone asks you, you're fired. So I understand that, but it's hard, especially as an American, to watch this film and not think, well, this is obviously Vietnam.
Iranian film censors is the answer to that. And if you think about what was happening at that time, this is not long before the what year was the Iranian hostage crisis?
I want to say it was 77.
It was late 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think they deliberately re-edited the film in Iran. They got hold of it, completely without the distributors or Hill's permission, and just made it into an anti-American war film, which actually, when you think about what's happening in it, would be pretty easy to do if you had a good editor on that. All right, let's talk about the cast. So I'm going to go in the order I've got them written down, which is not this chap. Walter Hill's had this is the only time this guy worked with Walter Hill, by the way, but we'll come back to that. I'm going to have to put up with a shitload of adverts now. So right at the beginning, of course, the leader of the group, and I'm trying to see if there's a still of him, but I haven't got it. That's Sonny Landham, almost unrecognizable back there.
Yeah, he's totally unrecognizable.
Yeah. But
if nobody can I explain it? If nobody understands who Sonny Landham is, he's Billy from Predator.
Yeah, well, we're going to come on to him, and actually, there's, I mean, in some really small roles, there's some really interesting people. So, Peter Coyote is kind of cast as the commander. Right, I'm going to say a spoiler now. So, anybody who doesn't want to hear this spoiler, mute me now for about 20 seconds. Mute now. So he dies in like the first 10 minutes, and the reason that they cast him because he was of the cast, he was one of the biggest names of the time because he'd done a lot of theatre in New York and LA, and some pretty big TV movies and that kind of thing. And Walter Hill wanted to get a big name in that part, so that when lulling the audience into this is going to be your lead, and then so when he gets killed, they're kind of shit. I don't know what's going to happen, and that's interesting that they kind of do that with Dallas in Alien as well, but it takes a lot longer to get there. Right. But there's a lot of similarities between this script and Alien and Aliens, because the co-writer of this script was David Giller, who co-wrote Aliens and also wrote The Postman Always Rings Twice, the sort of reboot version. So Peter Coyote, most people will know him as Elliot's dad in E.T., and he's really good in this, and he kind of knows his shit. And like I say, he's in the film for a brief period, but
I believe they even say. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
I believe they even said that he's a Vietnam vet. Like he's done a couple tours of Vietnam.
That's right. There's like a couple of lines about each character in the first 10 minutes, which is quite. We get to know the sort of the squad, and that's one of the opening lines, either said to him or I don't think it's said by him. I think it's either said to him or about him.
I think they said it about him after he mute your microphone or mute the channel, everybody. After he gets blown away, they're like, Jesus, he was 2 tours Vietnam or something like that.
I mean, I'm going to talk about another character in relation to him in a bit, which is something I picked up on when I first watched. Don't forget, when I first watched this, I was like barely a teenager. It might have been only even been 12. I can't remember. I was very young anyway. And but I think I saw it in 83. It was released 81. I think it was released on video towards the end of 82, and probably in the UK 83. Peter Coyote is one of my favorite character actors of all time. He's getting on a bit now. God, what I wouldn't give to interview him. But he is really good in if you haven't seen it, Copa, he's in a 2-part miniseries, one of these kind of made for TV, was sort of late 80s, 90s. Most of them were released on video through the Odyssey label. And there were several that were really good. And one of the ones that was really good was The Deliberate Stranger with Mark Harmon, where he played Ted Bundy. That was a really good mini drama. Peter Coyote did one that was really similar, where he played a very manipulative teacher who is suspected of killing his lover and her children. And the body of his lover is found in the boot of the car, but the bodies of the children are never found. And Robert Logue is the head teacher of that school, and it's also suspected that he's involved. It's a very, very good drama. I'll look up the name of it in a sec. And that's worth tracking down, because Peter Coyote tends to kind of play nice guys, family men, sort of solid, dependable guys. You rarely get to see him play a kind of narcissistic serial killer. When I saw him,
when you see him in E.T., he's kind of this lovable, like consoling kind of guy, even though he's intruding on Elliot's life. He kind of consoles Elliot, and he kind of makes you feel good, especially when you're a kid. And when he finally comes into the screen, not as Keys, as the guy, who you only get the shot of the Keys, but as a shot of almost his dad, like leaning down and consoling you, saying, hey, this is a part of life. Sometimes beings die, your plants die, everything dies. So it's kind of interesting to see this consoling dude. And he's even like this in Southern Comfort, even to a point where he kind of tries to rally his guys around and get some unit cohesion going before they even get through their deployment here. But so that's kind of interesting that he plays this serial killer. I don't even see that.
That's there you go. That's the movie. Echoes of Darkness.
Echoes of Darkness.
You can probably track it down, and they had to re-edit the ending because the character that Robert Loggia played wasn't of the murder girl or wasn't fully tied to the case for quite a long time, and the film heavily suggested that he was, and some versions of the film end earlier because of that, depending on which one you get to see. But listen, Echoes of Darkness, well worth tracking down. I need to do like a stream about true story crime because that's a massive thing of mine. Stephen Ramson's just popped in. Hi, Stephen. Nice to see you. Thanks for popping in. And you can see all the Catania clan are also saying hello to Stephen. Possibly he's your nephew. Who knows? Okay.
More like an uncle.
More like an uncle.
More like an uncle that slaps me around a little bit.
So the next actor I've got on the list. Let's do them as I've got photos coming up. Save us faffing about. So this has got to be one of my favorite actors of all time. He's also been in a couple of my favorite films of all time, and we've just lost him. I can't believe it. Fred Ward. Have you seen Remo, Unarmed and Dangerous?
I have. I've seen Remo, Unarmed and Dangerous, but my favorite one of him is
Tremors.
Obviously, Tremors. You know, Tremors is up here, and then there's, why can't I think of it? The movie where they're doing the space race. Jeez.
I'm
drawing a blank on it.
Yeah. The Right Stuff.
Right Stuff.
The Right Stuff. No, yeah, he's brilliant in The Right Stuff.
Oh, so good. He's always walking around going, "No Buck Rogers." Yeah. So I mean that entire cast we can get into, but
I mean, so Walter Hill, and there you go. Jana's right up there with you, just coming up with the answer there.
She's so nice.
Walter Hill said of Ward that he didn't want to party, and he wanted to of all the actors, he wanted to stay in character on set all the time. When you had a couple of stand-up comedians on the cast and stuff, and he was very he was not aloof, but he was very serious about his process, and I get that because his character, I think he's called Casper. His character,
I believe so. Yes.
No, that's Les Lanham. I can't remember, but anyway, his character kind of separates himself from the others because at first he's the only one with live ammunition.
Reese is
Reese. That's it, Reese, and and he's and he kind of becomes a bit of an enemy within, although you could argue that about more than one character. The Remo movie, just very quickly on that, I saw the opening night of that with my very first girlfriend in London. And one of the things I remember when that movie started, and we saw it at the Odeon Leicester Square, massive big 70mm print, was the score of the music was absolutely fantastic. That's got a great theme tune, that movie.
Yeah, it does.
It's like Bond music. It's really boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
boom,
it's
boom.
really in your face, and it gets you pumped. Do you remember who does the music for that? For Remo Williams?
I think it might have been Jerry Goldsmith.
Wow.
It's certainly his style because it's got a very similar kind of immediate Capricorn 1 vibe. That boom, boom, boom. It's like that, and
you saw this on a 70mm print.
Yeah, it was huge screen. They nearly always showed films in 70mm at that cinema. So I saw Die Hard in 70mm there. Taking 22 people to see that. I'm doing a whole different stream about that.
Can I make you jealous for just a brief second?
Yes, please.
The last 70mm film I watched was a 70mm print of Interstellar with Christopher Nolan doing a Q&A afterwards.
Very good.
I mean, it was just breathtaking to watch this film shot on 70mm, printed on 70mm, and projected onto the screen. And
was that an IMAX screen?
No, it was not an IMAX screen.
Wasn't it? I thought, wasn't Interstellar shot for IMAX?
Yeah, it was shot for IMAX, but where he screened it was not in an IMAX theater. No.
I would like to have seen a 70mm print of that.
Oh yeah, I would love to see a 70mm print of it on IMAX, but I don't think IMAX even projects on film anymore. I think it's all digital.
It's all digital now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, well, I saw Interstellar at the IMAX Waterloo, which was the first big IMAX in London, and we were kind of in the middle of the middle. And there's that first big shot where they've gone into space and the ship's
Yeah.
really tiny, and the planets behind it are vast.
Yeah.
God, I felt small and the screen felt huge.
Yeah, exactly. Like even with this regular screen that we have, that 70mm print, because it's exactly how he wanted to present it.
Yeah. I can see that my Segway alarm is flashing. We probably should get back onto.
Okay, let's get on.
Let's get okay. So we don't need to say anything else about Fred Ward. Brilliant actor,
No.
quite young here, but probably one of the older cast of the cast, I think. Yeah, I mean, this is the first time many of these guys had worked together, and also, I think with one exception, which is Carradine, I think most of them hadn't worked with Walter Hill before either. So, there's a shot of some boats. See, and as you can see, that looks very similar to the location that we were at on Google Earth a moment ago. So here we got Keith Carradine along with Powers Booth running in the water. So Carradine is one of the Carradine brothers, of which there are three, and he had worked with them before on the Long Riders. Now, I saw the Long Riders on TV when I was a kid, but I deliberately tracked it down and bought the DVD years later. Very good film. Would love to own one of those coats. What do you think of Carradine in this movie? Because he plays it very straight.
Yeah. I think he does I think he does a fantastic job, especially being a dichotomous character to Powers Booth's character.
Yeah. I wasn't sure about him at first when I rewatched it again today, and he's kind of
the Carradine name. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, just at the beginning he's very cocky.
Yeah.
But then later in the film, he delivers a lot of his lines in a slightly different, kind of more monotone way. And I was thinking, I wonder what order this was filmed in. And it feels like he found the character in certain scenes, and then in other scenes, either he was being more restrained deliberately, or I was watching a slightly different performance. That was just my gut feeling.
My thought is, so the beginning of the film, he's what? Like this party guy. He's like, hey, I got some girls waiting for us during this exercise.
Yeah, sexercise.
Yeah, sexercise. Like, I got some sexercise for this exercise.
Yeah.
So he's telling all the guys he's got this exercise going for them. All they got to do is just get to the place. But later on, he kind of takes a position of a leadership role, and he kind of fills that void, that gap, along with Powers Booth. And maybe that's why his lines are so much different in the way he delivers them. It's kind of funny. And I can't tell you where the character hinges. I just know at some point he starts taking responsibility for the entire group along with Powers Booth.
Yeah, because I mean, Booth actually asks him to, take control of the situation, because the highest ranking guy that's left is completely inept. Right. And he's like, hang on, man, no way, because you're like setting me up to be responsible for this clusterfuck. So he doesn't want to do it, and he's like, how about you do it? And we know that Booth has got history, because he's kind of been posted down here as a punishment. And at one point in the film, when everything's going to shit, he thinks it's some kind of setup, if you remember that scene.
Yeah.
And they don't really take that any further, but it's quite interesting that, I mean, I would imagine his character must have had a whole backstory written out, and Walter Hill must have given him some kind of character sheet and said, this is what's happened to you.
Yeah, he must have been given some kind of dossier of like, this is your life between Texas and Louisiana, and why you've been transferred over here, or why you're in the Louisiana Guard now. because you definitely get the sense that he's being punished.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. He's kind of down there as some kind of detail for penalty for some kind of sin, and
Right.
we never get to find out what that is, sadly. Now we've got 3 actors on the canoes here, not the same canoes that they tried to put a camera tripod in. I hate saying you wouldn't have had a lot of luck. You'd be all right with a digicam these days. Now, in the front is Lewis Smith, who's the aforementioned guy who tries to take command, not very successfully. We'll come back to him in a sec. Fred Ward in the middle. The guy on the end, who unjustly so is not credited in that IMDb still, which is a bit slack of them. That actor is Lewis Smith. Now, more recently, you would have seen him as a Southern hick in Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino's, which I also watched that recently because I had a clip of it at my annual Christmas movie quiz, so I needed to write down all the questions. He was also in a very weird cult film that I'm wondering if you've seen, Copa, and I'm sure you probably have, was another kind of 80s rent favorite, Buckaroo Banzai and Adventures Across the Fifth Dimension.
Yeah,
so he's also in that. I haven't seen him in much else apart from those 2 things. He plays Stucky, and he really is playing the character that causes the whole mess. And I remember when I was watching the film and that happened, I don't want to, again, get into spoilers too much. I was thinking, what the fuck is this guy doing?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's always one guy in the group, right, who's a complete and total jackass that can't control himself and thinks everything's a joke, and he ruins it for everybody. So, I mean, he's already displayed this when they were mustering, and he decided to fire blanks at his commanding officer of all people.
Yeah. And I mean, if he did that, if that happened these days, and I mean, Walter Hill does say, look, I don't think any of my films are realistic. They're here to entertain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if that happened these days, he would have been carted off to, some hot box in Fort Bragg.
For sure. He would have been hauled off to Leavenworth. There wouldn't even be a trial.
And I mean, I wonder as well, how the safety protocols have changed in terms of firing an M60 placed in front of the camera, endless rounds of ammunition. He must have fired off half a belt to a group of 20 extras. Now, I mean, this wouldn't be the sort of blank that would discharge something out the front. It would just, make the bang and go through. But, the safety precautions on set now after the Alec Baldwin incident.
I was about to say, except for dust.
Yeah, would be quite stringent. Or of course, if it was a rock film, it would be a rubber gun, and we would just have lots of really naff CGI. And oh my god, because it's okay for the Rock to put armorers out of business because they haven't worked in the industry for years, and of course they all have as many millions as he does.
Right, anyway. he can totally survive crushing an entire section of the industry.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, we're segueing again, but accidents have happened in the industry before in other areas, stunts. There's been people have died of makeup allergies, etc., etc., etc. There have been weird and bizarre accidents in film production since the dawn of film production, but those departments have never been erased from history because of that person's mistake. What you do is you improve the safety protocols. What you don't do is you wipe out an established section of the crew on your set for film production and say all guns should be rubber from now on. I mean, and you're not just eliminating the armor on the set, but also people that design the weapons. And
I was about to say, you're eliminating props, you're eliminating the props department, or at least they don't have as much work as they would.
Yeah. So I actually, I mean, look, I've used CGI work in film myself. I showed you some clips of Paratrooper before we were doing the stream, but all my principal cast in that, they all had to learn to fire weapons and load them and unload them and strip them and all that kind of thing. And even if we used CGI, they'd usually be firing the weapon for real. There'd be some kind of motion. You can't do that with a rubber gun because it doesn't have a cocking mechanism,
Right. Well, I
So-
mean, with the rubber gun, you have to tell the actor to snap their wrist, and it just
Yeah.
doesn't look right. It just doesn't react right.
CGI the wrist in.
Yeah. Well,
So-
just a rubber band flapping and everywhere.
That's the character of Stuckey on the right, and I've got to say, I think for me, the actor who plays him, he plays him like at 11 the whole way through, and it works. The role definitely requires it. Lewis Smith, he is still a jobbing actor. He is still working.
I think he was properly casted in that part too. He played that
Yeah.
part so well because you really felt like you wanted to go over there and deck him. Like, stop, dude. Like,
Yeah.
this is not fun. This is not a game.
Now
Who
Lewis
was that one
Smith,
guy?
yeah. So Lewis Smith on the end here, not Lewis Smith. This is I think it's Les Lanham, who plays Casper.
Yeah.
Now, he has worked and he's done bits and pieces. He took a big break from acting at one point, only to return to play Vic Fontaine on stage in Grease, the musical. That was in 2012. Walter Hill said of him that the studio didn't want him, but he said, no, this guy's going to be right for the part. I think he's perfect because he's the guy who does everything by the book. Excuse me. And as a result of that, he has no flexibility. So he kind of alienates himself more and more from the other characters. And maybe that's the quality that Walter Hill saw in him. And he said that he's never worked with him since, and he kind of regretted that. And he said he didn't know why he never worked with him again. He was one of the best actors he worked with, but he kind of came in and came out, but he really liked his performance, and I do too. I think he's very good in it. So look out for him in Greece, coming to your town.
I think he was also in a movie called Hard to Kill with Tom Berenger and Sidney Poitier and Kirstie Alley.
Yeah, that movie, which is superb. I saw that at the cinema. That movie's got about 3 different titles, and over here, over here it was called something else. And I remember it having 2 because it didn't do very well in the States. So what they often do is they repackage, new poster, new title, new trailer, and then they re-release again in the UK. And that was the one that had the Kurgan, Clancy Brown playing the bad guy in it. And I think your man Les Lanham, was he one of the other hikers in the group?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and then you had the guy who plays Deep Space Nine, the Taylor, the Cardassian Taylor. He's in that movie as well. It's a really good film, actually. I liked it.
I liked it too. And to be to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I remember it being a very big rental film.
Yeah,
like it wasn't big in the States here, like theatrically, but when it hit the small little rental houses, it was always out.
Yeah, I
Hard to Kill.
So not to be confused with the Steven Seagal film Hard to Kill.
No.
Which I
no. You know what? Sorry, not Hard to Kill. Shoot to Kill.
Shoot to Kill, right?
Shoot to Kill.
Shoot to Kill. It was, and I think that was the. Now it was in the UK. It was released as Deadly Pursuit, and that is what I
really.
Saw it. Yeah, it was released as Deadly Pursuit, and you know what happens when they change the name in something? If it's the second title, don't forget these name changes occurred before IMDb came along. That's the title that ends up sticking with the movie.
There it is.
Yeah. But I remember. So there you go. There's a Shoot to Kill poster, but you can see on IMDb it's called Deadly Pursuit. So that's
I had no idea.
Great. That's That's another great film. We should do a retro review about that.
I would love to.
Yeah, that's a good that film. You can watch that film now, people, and that film holds up really well today. It was a bit of a comeback for Poitier because he hadn't done a feature in quite a while. And
I remember he did this, and I don't know if it was a little bit before or a little bit out. I'm pretty sure it was a little bit before he did this movie with River Phoenix called not La Femme Nikita, Little Nikita, the Little Nikita.
Yeah, and it was kind of like he's like a Russian spy or
The parents are Russian spies.
Yeah.
Portier is a
FBI
agent.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a precursor to the Americans, but it was told through the lens of the son.
Now here's an interesting thing, right? These are the bad guys in the movie. One of them is Sonny Landham from Predator. He's actually the one with the red body warmer there. And guys watching this online, you might have to zoom in a little bit. Just welcome Vex Electronica to the stream. That's a cool name. It sounds like you should be in some kind of cyber world movie. What do they call it? What's the name of that role-playing game? Cyber something?
Cyberpunk?
Cyberpunk.
Yeah, dude. She's totally in Cyberpunk.
Shadowrun.
She is the Cyberpunk.
That's a name for Shadowrun and Cyberpunk. I'm not sure what this name is. That could be a different movie entirely. Anyway, so we've got our 4 guys, punk rock band, cool. We've got our 4 villains here. Now, the question is, because there's Brian James, we'll talk about Brian James in a bit, but they end up capturing a guy who they think is responsible for trying to attack their unit, and they keep him as a prisoner, and it's always kind of played with a bit of ambiguity as to whether he had anything to do with it or not, and you're not quite sure. But if you look at these 4 guys, I don't think any of them is Brian James. So from what I can see from that still. And one of those, the one on the left with the big cowboy hat on, and we might see a still of him later, that is stunt coordinator and legendary stuntman Alan Graff, who has been in absolutely everything. And he has 222 stunt credits, and I've just written to him and asked him to come on the channel. So watch this space.
Well, he was in Rocky IV, right?
He's done everything, man. Yeah, he does coordinate a lot of boxing fights. That's one of his specialties. He coordinates a lot of boxing stunt work. So I mean, he's a legend. It would be great if he's getting on a bit now, but it'd be great if I could get him on. Okay, let's talk about Franklin Seals. So Franklin Seals, quite rare that you got Hispanic characters in films of this type back then. We kind of had our man in Chips, California Highway Patrol.
Oh, yeah. Eric Estrada,
but you didn't get a lot of Hispanic characters in big movies, especially not this type of movie. And this is Franklin Seals. He's very good in this. Walter Hill was very happy with him. He's like the radio man. And tragically, he died of an HIV-related illness in, I think it's 1990. And Walter Hill said it was particularly hard on him because the young kid in the Warriors also died of HIV in the 90s, and they died within a couple of years of each other, and he felt like he'd lost one of his children from two of his movies. So, but Franklin's also in The Onion Field, which is another old movie worth tracking down. True story about a guy who murdered a policeman. He plays one of the murderers. I think there are 2 murderers in the film. What did you think of his performance in Southern Comfort?
I thought his performance was good. It's, after telling you that, I kind of feel bad for saying it's kind of largely forgettable.
His character does blend it. He doesn't get given a lot to do.
Yeah, he's not.
Some of the other characters are much bigger, and they take up more oxygen.
I would say his time to shine is kind of towards the end when he starts to lose it as well.
Yeah.
When he starts to lose it after, I guess, the unit commander or whoever's in charge at that point says, get back to the other guys. He's like, you're crazy. That was his moment to shine. But other than that, he's largely in the background.
He's got a pretty good. His final scene, and I don't want to say too much more, is pretty good.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
You do feel it, even though you don't really grow with him.
Yeah.
You do feel that moment. It's almost like he's purposely kind of kept in the background, right? So when his death does come, it's kind of like that friend that doesn't really deserve it.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, if I remember correct. Well,
I tried not to give away the spoiler that he actually bought it in, but you gave it away there.
I gave it away there. So, but I mean, it's just so to explain where I'm coming from. I guess I kind of had to spoil it because, right? You when he does buy it, you really do feel it because of the lines that he said. I think what wouldn't spoil it still is what he says when he is finally killed. And that kind of hits home because you're like, yeah, like why him of all people?
Yeah. Well, a couple of your clan have just subbed, so I'd like to say thanks very much for that. I've been working on this channel for quite a while, and it's quite hard to make your channel stand out nowadays.
And like this video.
Yeah, I think they've been doing that too. So thanks very much for that.
Good.
Spread the word. There's a lot of interviews. If you have a look around the channel, there's a lot of interviews with actual actors working in the industry. I've had one Hollywood legend come on who worked with Elvis and used to date Frank Sinatra. Irene Sue, who was in Paper Tiger with David Niven. That's an old classic favorite film of mine. But I've also had people like Danny Webb from Alien 3, Jason Flemyng, various others, and there's more coming. So do check those out. Okay, we got to talk about TK Carter, and then we can do Les in the same. Well, we've kind of covered Les a little bit. So TK Carter, of course, most people will know him from The Thing. I'm gonna hedge a bet and say that this still was not taken during an actual take, but was probably between takes, because
I don't remember anybody smiling in this movie.
Well, TK Carter gets all the best lines because there's one bit where they come across 7 man traps, these huge man traps for capturing and killing animals, and one of the squad goes, "Yeah, that's like a giant steel pussy," and he turns around and says, "Jesus, man, what kind of women have you been hanging out with?" And apparently that wasn't in the script; it was improv. And he's a stand-up comedian. So in the first in the scenes that was kind of set in the first 12 hours, Walter Hill was like, "Yeah, keep being the comedian, and I don't really want you to try acting. Just like be yourself." And he just had people in stitches all the time, and I think Fred Ward found that a little bit annoying sometimes because everybody would kind of laugh and break character at his jokes. I think Les is trying not to laugh in the background here.
Yeah, you can tell that he's holding back.
TK Carter is in the movie The Thing. He plays Knowles. We kind of never see what happens to Knowles. I always remember that about The Thing, that he was kind of robbed of a proper death scene, which was a bit of a shame. But I really like him as an actor. Nowadays, let's have a quick look and see what he's doing. I think he's still working. I think he might be. He may be one of those people that's also gone into directing. But he's a great actor. I mean, God, I'd love to get him on the channel, man, because he was involved in The Corner. That's a really good show.
Okay.
Space. So he's done. Okay, so 67 acting credits. Still doing some bits here and there. Guest appearances on things like Saints and Sinners and that kind of thing. Injustice. But which often means I'm doing lots of work in theatre. But he was really good in The Corner. He really showed his acting chops. And if you haven't seen The Corner, this is a really fantastic show.
I'm adding it to the list.
Yeah, based on a true story. It's the precursor to The Wire. It's set in the same neighborhood. It's by the same creator.
Okay.
And it's basically about his childhood and growing up as a teenager. So T.K. Carter plays his dad, who's now a drug addict and constantly looking for ways to steal stuff. But you get these wonderful flashback scenes where you see how his life got derailed and he became that person. And then the guy in the top right, who's also a cracking actor, who I think went on to be in Oz. I think he went on to be the guy in the wheelchair in Oz. That's his son. So the storylines are kind of from the dad's point of view, the son's point of view, and the mum's point of view, and you get like a different perspective in each episode of the 6-part. I've got the DVD of this actually. We're segueing again. Now I've got to tell myself. I'll tell myself.
Finally, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, it was me. Sorry. Okay, so the buzzer went off. Lance is reined in because I end up recommending so much shit to people. But guys, you're going to get that a lot on this channel. You tune in. I'm going to recommend you some really good stuff to watch that you have not seen. And I'm also going to put up your comments whenever I can, whether they relate to what we're talking about or not. So Sonny Landon is like unrecognizable as this guy practically. They put a big 70s tash on him. And they really covered up his face. I was trying to work out what type of fish that was when I was watching it today.
Yeah, I don't know, because usually with Louisiana Bayou, you catfish right away, but that's not a catfish.
No, I don't know. It looks like a tilapia from Uganda, Lake Victoria. So here's a great shot of our key cast. So there's one actor that we haven't talked about. It was a couple actually. I mean, but the guy who plays Coach, who's a huge, beefy, powerful actor. I've got something I want to say about him. Now, he is played by Alan Autry. And Alan Autry discovered, I think, partway through filming, and he was originally under a different name. I might not have this completely correct, but it was either he discovered he was adopted and his family heritage was not what he thought, or he suddenly discovered his second cousin was this famous Hollywood actor, and somehow that information had been kept from him. I want to be a bit loose there because I don't want to say something that's not true. But he changed his name to Autry during the production, and Walter Hill said he had a massive kind of soul-searching journey about his identity and everything, which is quite interesting when you think about the crazy batshit character that he plays.
Well, that adds to his character, because his character, what does he do? He acts like he's in control, and then he loses control. He's pretty much the reason why the unit cohesion just goes completely haywire right off the bat. And then he tries to overcompensate as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, in real life, this guy was a pro American football player. He was a star quarterback, starting out for the Riverdale Cowboys. Then he was with the Green Bay Packers, which is a team I have actually heard of, even though I have no interest in American football whatsoever. Sports commentator for a while, went into politics, and was certainly at the time of the Walter Hill interview that I saw, which I think was 2011, he was still the mayor of Fresno and had been elected the mayor of Fresno about 5 times. And now has kind of like bright bleached blonde hair. I mean,
yeah, dude, that's what the California coast will do to you, is get you that blonde hair.
So I've got 2 things to say about his character. Did you pick up anything on him? I know that Peter Coyote is not in the movie for a huge length of time, but did you pick up on anything between him and Peter Coyote's character in the storyline?
Like what? They're gay?
I not that they're gay, but I got a sense that his character had some kind of unrequited obsession with him a little bit.
I think he looked at Peter Coyote because he's a coach. They call him coach because presumably he's a coach of like some kind of high school team. I'm guessing high school football. So they call him coach, but I'm guessing coach never was able to go to war, even though he wanted to, but Peter Coyote did. So what I got the sense is that he looked up to Peter Coyote, right? He looked up to him as like, hey, you are what I've always aspired to be, which was this man who grew up, went to war, survived it, came home. Now you're kind of teaching us young bucks, and maybe I can be one day something that you already have been. So yeah, I you know, you do get that sense, right? You get that sense that he does look up to him in some way, like almost a child looks up to
I
a dad.
I got all of that, but the moment when he panics and he calls him by his first name, I felt he was in love with him, and it was a whole repressed thing that he'd been keeping in.
Yeah.
Now, look,
That's
if this film is ever remade, and God forbid, please don't do that. That's what they're going to do with the storyline. There's going to
if
be
it
that
was remade,
storyline will be a major plot thing. I quite like the fact that if it was there,
it's ambiguous.
It's really tiny. It's very subtle
Oh
because
yeah.
in the time period that this was set, that there's absolutely no way that relationship would ever be consummated. But I quite like the idea that at the moment where suddenly something really bad happens, the barrier that maybe he's put up all the time to kind of conceal his repressed homosexuality, suddenly just for a second, it snaps.
Oh yeah, it gets stripped. It gets stripped
comes
away.
down, and there's suddenly a little window, and it's like, oh shit, this guy might be gay, and he's the big macho one. I quite like that. I thought that was clever. If that was intentional, I thought that was very clever. And maybe that was a layer they built in, because you get little layers about these guys, like who are they in the life outside of here. And I like the way we never quite know everything about them. We just get a sense.
I see. I take it more as of he's a child looking up to his father figure. And as soon as his father figure is stripped away of his humanity, meaning he died, that's when this character's entire thought process of what it's like to be a man is also stripped away. And so he quickly tries to rebuild that masculinity back up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But he overcompensates. And then all of a sudden, you know, he turns into, he's like this soft guy that ruins the entire thing for everybody because of the way he panics.
Yeah.
So the way he overcompensates also ruins it for everybody because of the way he overcompensates.
And it's funny, right? Because you know how it is. You remember things differently. And it was a long time since I've seen the film. I did watch it twice. I rented it once on video, and then I think a group of friends of us, we rented it again a few years later. I was with a different group of people, and they were looking for a movie, and I said, "Yeah, this one is good." And the thing I remembered was that the Les Lanham character, who actually is the only character in the squad not in this shot, in my memory, it was him that panicked in the boat and jumped out. And I had that in my head because he was the one who seemed to have the tight relationship with Coyote. And I remembered that relationship, and therefore I thought that's the guy who panics in the boat and kind of maybe has a bit of a crush on his leader buddy. But actually it was a completely different character that I'd kind of forgotten caused that moment. I remember the whole thing with him having the rope around his neck all the time. And well, let's talk about the plot, because we covered all the actors apart from Brian James, who plays one of the bad guys, who is a Walter Hill regular collaborator. And we'll see if we can get. There's a pig roast, which is definitely a good reason to go to Louisiana. I don't know if we can. I don't know if there's a shot of Brian. There he is. I knew there'd be one.
Yeah, Brian James.
Give him a quick shout out. He passed away quite young. Great character actor. Has a lovely part in one of my favorite westerns of all time, Silverado. He's kind of the head of the wagon train in that. We won't quit, you bastards. And really well liked in the industry. I know several people that worked with him. I heard lovely stories about him, and directors that worked with him, they always wanted to work with him again.
I liked him as Leon in Blade Runner. It doesn't get much better than that.
Steven's saying, what, the plot? We don't need to talk about that. Well, actually, I do want to talk about it, because on my streams, I always want to talk about the script, because I'm a script writer and a playwright, and I've got a play on in a few weeks, actually. But I don't want to go into it at too great a length. But For me, there's one flaw in it. I don't want to say what that is until I've heard your opinion. On the whole, I think it's a really good script. It's very clever. It's a good, for anybody who's getting into screenwriting, you can see a lot of parallels between this and Alien in terms of setup and payoff and character setup. And there's a whole section at the beginning before the actual opening title comes up where you're very quickly, these are the characters in the platoon. This one's a bit like this. This one's a bit like this. This one's a bit like this. This one is the quiet, moody one. This is the new guy. This is the mouthy one. This is the one that's going to get you all in trouble. This is the suck up. You know, you're very quickly, and that's quite good because it's a bit like Black Hawk Down when you've got 10 guys in a movie, or in the case of that film, 50 guys, and they're all in the same kit. You need 10 distinctive personalities, and you do get that in this film. And for me, the casting and the characterization, and then the dilemma, of course, is what's really strong about it. But I do have one bugbear with it, but I'll come back to that. What are your thoughts on the script, and does it still hold up for you?
Yeah, I think it does, because I can't remember if we said this backstage or not, or on the stream itself, but Walter Hill said that this is not an allegory for Vietnam, but it's hard to not register that, like I said, as an American, to watch this film and not go, this is an allegory about Vietnam. But there's also a layer deeper than that to me, and I think that's just surface level. Like, if you want to watch it and you go, oh, this is just about Vietnam, whatever, this is another Vietnam movie, but it's set in the Louisiana Bayou. That's all set. That's all good. The second, watching it yesterday, I was kind of taken aback, because what it really is about is authority and the breakdown of authority, and who really has authority and who believes they have authority but really don't.
Yeah.
And it's not just, the National Guardsmen, they think they have the authority because they're National Guardsmen and they're going up against a bunch of Cajuns. No. There's like authority struggles inside the platoon as well. Like, who's the authority here? And then, right away, the authority figure for the platoon is blown away. His head's completely blown off. That's not a spoiler alert. That's in the first 15 minutes. So, then it turns into, well, who has authority? Is it the corporal? Or is it the next guy in the line? Is it the corporal who actually knows what he's talking about? Is it the outsider who just came in, but he seems to kind of know what's going on and has an outsider's perspective, a 30,000 foot view of everything that's going on? And then on top of that, it goes, well, how much authority do they have in a Louisiana swamp? And then how much authority do they have against Cajuns who know that swamp? And then you can pull back again and go, now you can make it go back to the allegory of the Vietnam War, which is the Americans came into the Vietnam thinking they were the authority. We dropped more armament on Vietnam than World War II, combined all allies and Axis powers. So on Vietnam. So that being said, you go, well, who thought they were the authority? Who came in thinking they were the authority? And then who taught them the lesson that, no, you're in our jungles. You're in our backyard. The jungle's the authority, and so are we. So, it's just a nice little amalgamation of, you could go in a circle with this thing and keep coming out the other side correct.
Yeah, the biggest character in this movie who's got no dialogue is actually, this is the perfect still to talk about that, is actually the Bayou. Because this is very typical of what I was talking about this at the beginning of the stream. For those people who've come on late, the color palette of this movie is very desaturated. It's very gray. It's very moody. You've got sort of, weak kind of tones of blue. The only khaki that you really see is on the National Guardsmen. The leaves in the trees are generally either grey or white. That kind of like white sort of Louisiana stuff that hangs down. I forget the name of it, but it's got a specific name. And the only time we see any green trees is when these mysterious pine trees start tipping over. And the guys and it feels like they're being hunted by an army. One of the other things that I wanted to mention about the film, which I think is particularly good, is the sound design, and the use of sound. There's a great scene with some dogs that is really well done from a stunt point of view. The way they cut that together, you really look like these actors are being attacked, and they made these dogs look as feral and as grimy as possible, and they really do look horrible. And it's I mean it the whole place just looks very grim. We said at the beginning, Copa was saying, you feel cold and wet and miserable when you're watching the film, and it isn't an easy watch. It's still not an easy watch.
No.
And
that dog attack, by the way, feels real. Like watching it again, I was like, man, they really did a good job with this dog attack.
I mean, they are, they are doing that thing where the dogs are trained to sort of bite
right
here.
So,
there's a lot of that going on, but it still looks really good because you've got a lot of shots of people on the ground and the dogs are really close, and they also hit the dogs with rifle butts, and they were probably they probably borrowed those rifles from The Rock. They're probably rubber rifles, but for that shot, but it looks good. It looks good, and the sound design is in that scene is really good, and just creating atmosphere. You feel like they're being hunted by a massive army, which actually isn't the case. The people that are hunting them are certainly initially their numbers are smaller than the platoon, but it's the
problem is that the insurgents, the Cajuns, have live ammunition.
That's right, and the soldiers dish out. I can't remember how many rounds they get each, like 5 rounds each,
it's
or
like
something.
4 or 5 rounds, yeah.
And like 3 of them like piss these rounds away in the next couple of scenes really quickly, and you're like going, Jesus Christ, man. And then one of them's like firing off into the air. Dude, you just wasted all your live ammunition. So and I noticed that same setup happens in the Aliens script, where it's like, you're under the coolant thing, you can't use your armor piercing rounds, and suddenly this unit with all this hardware is suddenly crippled and reduced to having a couple of small arms and couple of flamethrowers.
Yeah, they're rendered useless, right?
Yeah, and what are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language, and that kind of thing happens here, and I think even TK Carter has a kind of similar comeback line about it. That they're effectively sort of disabled in a way.
Right.
We need to shout out Ry Cooder as well, who does the score for this, and in fact collaborated with Walter Hill quite a few times, I think. And it's got his very distinctive guitar,
very distinctive, very Western, especially for a Louisiana Bayou film. Very Westernized, country Western, I mean.
Yeah.
Soundtrack. So. Because you were saying in backstage how you, or even here, I think, where you were saying that this is more like a Western to you.
Well, the allegory of Vietnam, I see, could easily be paralleled with the cavalry, taking out the Indians and massacring Indian villages and that kind of thing, and treating them as second-class citizens. But then the next thing you know, they're at the Battle of Little Bighorn. This is kind of that in a very minutiae. I see all the Vietnam stuff as well, but I have a feeling that the Vietnam stuff probably wasn't at the forefront of Hill's mind when he wrote it. He was probably just determined to write another Western. Of course, you had 2 other writers on it, so they were probably thinking, Western but Vietnam. So I think, and Stephen's saying dog ferocity cannot be computer generated. It can, but just extremely badly.
Yes.
In a lot of movies.
True.
Yeah, I've seen some. I mean, the best computer generated dogs we ever had were in the first Ghostbusters movie, let's face it. And
good doggy. Yeah. Nice little pooch.
Dude, that was a good impression there.
Oh, thank you.
Sounded just like him. What's he doing now?
Well, I do know this story. that Rick Moranis kind of retired because his wife passed away with breast cancer back.
That's right. I read that.
Yeah, and then afterwards he just kind of retired and raised his kids so they could, you know,
Yeah. No, good for
have a
him.
good decent life.
Good
Yeah.
for- yeah.
I'm like, dude, word. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to hate on that whatsoever.
Oh,
Actually,
no.
put
That
family
I actually think,
priorities first.
I actually
Absolutely.
think that's really commendable, and
100%.
and he should come on the channel and talk about it.
I think so as well. Rick,
I
what are you
think,
doing?
yeah, no, I think that's that's just a really heartwarming stories, you know.
Mhm.
My heart goes out to him. I've lost people in my life as well who've gone far too young, so I can relate. On that note, we should raise a glass, although I've only got water to hand. But we should raise a glass to the late great man that we just lost
Oh,
from
yes.
Saving Private Ryan,
Mhm.
Heat, True Romance. God, the list is significant. And I actually took 20 people to see the opening night of Heat in London, not knowing if it was going to be any good.
Oh, wow. Well, you came out of there knowing exactly that it was perfect.
Oh no, it was great. And we went to Alien War the same night as well, which, if you don't know, is an Aliens immersive experience. It's not around anymore, but it was a big thing in London in the late 80s, right through to the mid sort of late 90s.
Okay.
And you went round this kind of complex, and the aliens break out, and the Marines have to run around and
That's
take
awesome.
you out. But yeah, Tom Sizemore was a phenomenal actor. I mean, he's just very good in everything I've seen him in. I don't want to segue on this too long, but I do think we should give him a shout out. I could do a whole stream about him, but Heat in particular, I remember when I came back from seeing that, and we were all raving about how good it was. And one of my flatmates at the time, somebody of modicum intelligence, clearly said, "Oh, that film was really long and boring." And I said to them, didn't you get the whole setup was that the whole point was when you got to the gun battle at the end, you didn't know which side to root for. You were so confused. It was like, well, yeah, I kind of want the robbers to escape, but they're robbers.
Right.
But I kind of want Al Pacino to win, but yeah, it was really
so Michael
clever.
Mann understood, like, he split his time perfectly with the cops and robbers, and you understood perfectly their lifestyles, their backgrounds, their desires. Even with a secondary character like Tom Sizemore's character, Michael Chirito is what I believe his character's name was. Michael Chirito, you knew he was either married or he was getting married. I think he was getting married because he presented his girlfriend at the time a ring over dinner. So Michael Mann was so perfect at showing you the backgrounds of characters without telling you. No one said, "Oh, Michael Chirito's getting married in 6 months," or he just asked his wife. No, he just presented a girl with a ring over dinner, and she acted shocked. You knew they were in love. Yeah, I mean, it was just great. Heat is one of those perfect movies you can watch over and over again, and you get something different out of it every single time.
Yeah, it's got a real richness to the characters, and I picked up on a lot more with the characterization in Southern Comfort, just so, as Stephen Ransom says, we don't stay at the Segway Cabana for too long.
Sure.
And I just want to welcome Static 2020, who's also new to my stream. Really lovely to see you. Matty Holmes is in. So Matthew Holmes is a very talented film director, good friend of mine. He's just had the nightmare film shoot of his life. I'm sorry to go back to say Segway Cabana, but I've got to give Matthew a shout out. So he's one of my closest friends. How we met is I backed a crowdfunding campaign of his when he was making a short film called The Legend of Ben Hall. And I did an actual video about it. We'd never met. We were doing videos where we plugged crowdfunding campaigns that we liked. And I said on the video, this should be a feature, Matt. And then he agreed. I'm sure he was already thinking about that. And it became a feature film. And it's a Western. I'm going to show you guys the movie I'm talking about real quick. And I've got the Blu-ray of it in the other room. And Matthew and I have such a tight friendship now that, like, whenever one of us is writing a script or we're cutting a movie, we'll send each other reels and we'll show each other trailers and all of that kind of stuff. Now, this is not his first film. Legend of Ben Hall, Matthew will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Legend of Ben Hall is his second or third movie. Twin Rivers was the first film he did. Basically, somehow, I don't know how, but me and him are actually some kind of like peas from the same pod. We're probably related somehow.
Is that Australian?
Yeah. It's a good little film. He shot it for a really, really tight budget. And it's a true story. He's a real kind of history buff of the whole sort of Australian bushranger culture, and these very sort of kind of true bank robber characters. And he's currently editing. He's on post-production on a film called Fear Below. I don't want to say too much about it, but they got flooded out of their main location. He lost a week and a half's filming. They couldn't give him that week and a half back. So a whole load of stuff had to be cut from the movie. Imagine you've been a filmmaker grafting all your life, and you've been making indie movies for budgets of under $1 million, under 500,000, that kind of thing. You suddenly got the budget to make your dream script, and you know your budget is like $5-6 million. I can't remember the exact budget of Fear Below, but it's in that region. And Matt, if I'm talking about anything I shouldn't, just say so in the chat and I'll shut up. But and then suddenly you're rained out of your production, and bless him, he's been so strong, and you know he's kind of how he's not gone mad. I don't know, because a lesser filmmaker would have had a complete mental breakdown, but he's managed to stay the course. Anyway, he's a really great guy. So guys,
and now he's in post-production.
He's in post-production on Fear Below. So look out for Fear Below. Probably
congratulations, Matthew Holmes.
But he's got a great movie out called The Cost, which is coming out really soon. And get this, Copa, he shot it in lockdown.
With what? How'd you do that? How did you manage that? Especially in Australia? Because, well, at least in the States, we saw what was going on in Australia, and we were horrified.
It's a great film. I was the first person to see the rough cut of it.
Okay.
And, you know, because he was asking me for feedback and stuff. And it's about two guys who kidnap a third guy, and this guy raped the daughter of one of the other guys.
Ooh, okay.
And he really puts you in the shoes of these guys. He really makes you those characters in the film. It's very, very clever. And it's like, you know, what would you do if this guy had raped and murdered your daughter and you had him? What would you do to it?
Right.
You know what I mean? And listen, it's a really clever thing. Jana is saying Matthew should be on the show. Well, Matthew has been on my channel. He co-hosted a stream with me, I think once, but maybe twice. And he's going to do one with me about Westerns. And I think we're going to do another one about stuff. But he does come on the channel. The Cost isn't out yet. I think they're about to drop the trailer. But guys, I highly recommend The Cost. It's a great little film. You see, it's been on at a couple of little film festivals. Really small, tight film, kind of Blood Simple kind of vibe. And sorry, guys, I know we've really segued here, but
no. Yeah. Promoting stuff. Anytime we can, or at least for me, anytime you can get an indie filmmakers stuff out there,
exactly.
Pump it out.
Well, Matthew is a member of the Outcast Creative. We got 3 members in Australia. He's one of them. And the whole philosophy of the Outcast Creative is we support independent creative people to the max. And that's not to say that I would say no if Steven Spielberg wanted to come on the channel for an interview. Of course I wouldn't. But the primary function of my channel is to not only promote films that I think are good that you've missed, or TV shows that you might not have considered watching, but is also to promote the work of other channels, which is why I've got Copa on here, and other filmmakers like Matthew, actors, creatives, and, you know, I'm always plugging them. I've done that my whole life, actually. And so, you know, anyway, so there I go.
I have to say, especially to Matthew Holmes, your film Legend of Ben Hall looks like Ned Kelly from like maybe 20 years ago.
Now, Matthew will have something to say about that in chat. I will let Matthew talk about Ned Kelly in
I
chat.
hope I didn't offend anybody. But
No.
Okay.
He won't be offended by that. Both me and Matthew have both had big films that nearly got the green lit, and then they all fell apart, and we became mutual kind of support for each other online. And actually, usually when I'm up really late at night, he's just getting up in the morning, so it works quite well for me. But he had a Ned Kelly project that he worked really hard on that didn't happen, and he's a big fan again of that whole history. And anyway, back to Southern Comfort.
Okay,
so
yes.
Which, by the way, it's Matthew's fault that I'm doing this stream, because we were talking about Water Hill films, and he said, oh my god, I want to get Southern Comfort on Blu-ray, and you can't get it over here. And I said, let me see if I can find it, because I wanted a copy of it. And lo and behold, I got it. And I thought, actually, I want to do a stream about it. Now, this is a scene where someone's drowning in the swamp. It's always fascinated me how they shoot this stuff in a movie. And the telling of how they do that is actually in this photograph, because you can see by the way that it's framed that this would be a very controlled area. There's probably a platform under there that the guy's standing on that's buried in the ground. The water was probably added. This is probably not in the swamp. It will be edited very cleverly to look like that.
This could be Walter Hill's backyard.
I mean, it could be. It's probably. I would suggest the location is probably local to the other locations, but they found somewhere with a shallow, stable depth where the ground wasn't sinking. You'd put a platform underneath. You cover a lot of the water with sawdust, and then you put mud on top of that so that the mud settles on the sawdust and it doesn't sink. Just going to say, hey, I think this is another one of your guys. Jacob Ironsides popped in.
It is.
Nice to see you, Jacob. Do like and subscribe. Be great to get a few more subs out of this, and hopefully I'll bring a few of my guys over to Copa's channel when I'm guest whatever we end up talking about on your channel. I'm sure it'll be something I'll be up for. And here we've got Brian James again. Another spoiler alert. Again, hit your mute button. Yeah, another spoiler. I like the idea of he could speak English the whole time.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
That's clever. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he's rolling with these guys the whole time, and he's speaking Cajun French, and you barely understand him, and he's speaking whatever he is speaking, Cajun French, and then all of a sudden, it's a great reveal.
Yeah, it's
you feel duped the entire time because.
Yeah.
But you really feel for his character as well, right? Especially because of what our guys do to him.
And I think, having watched the film again and paying particular attention to this, I think he basically is wholly innocent of any crime.
Yeah.
He's not one of the four.
I don't think so either.
They keep that ambiguous, because when we get to see them close up, I think you only meet three of them at the end, and they keep the fourth person deliberately, opaque. But I don't think it is him, and he was very tall. Now, here's two of our villains, and that is stuntman Alan Graff.
Okay.
On the right. Now, you won't recognize him from that photo, but if I show you another picture of him, actually, we need to do this on Google, because that's where you're going to get the best. Right, there we go. So this is who we're talking about. This is a much better picture of him. And trust me, if you watch any fight or action sequence in any Hollywood movie or TV show from the late 70s right through to the mid 90s, this guy will be in the background somewhere, sitting at a table, reading a newspaper.
There you go. Bottom left there is Rocky IV.
Yeah.
As you're talking about it.
Yeah, and I said pretty sure he choreographed the boxing fights. But I mean, he's been in the industry. That's right. And this is the scene I always remember him in. It's that in Boogie Nights, the guy goes in to buy the donuts for his pregnant wife.
Oh my God, is that him?
Yeah. And he's sitting there, and he's reading reading a Guns and Ammo magazine. And he's reaching for the gun, and the guy behind the counter is like, "Don't do it." And then that whole thing happens, and and then of course he gets the money to start Buck's stereo world. Listen, I'd love to do a stream about Boogie Nights. That's one of my favorite films of all
Oh,
time.
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
That and Magnolia.
And yeah, Magnolia, Tom Cruise's best performance of his career. Still,
I agree.
I still don't think he's topped it. So
I don't think so either.
You see, we agree on almost everything except for Avatar.
I'm going to have to convince you, dude. I'm going to have to convince you what's going on there.
Oh, I've been brought around on Avatar 2, but Avatar 1 I still really love it, and I've seen it so many times on the big screen. But
we'll see if I can convert you.
See the light. That is Alan Graff there, and you would never know.
No,
that was him. Now Ned Dowd, who plays the other guy, I'm not sure if he's just a stunt man or if he was a bit part actor. Let's have a quick look. He's still alive. In Last of the Mohicans. So I'm gonna think he was a producer. Look at that.
Whoa.
So Ned Dowd, who played
he produced Apocalypto as well.
A bit part guy. Look at this. He's producer. And Last of the Mohicans is one of Matthew's favorite films. Mine too. Additional crew on Slapshot. Slapshot's another film I'd like to do a stream about.
Yeah.
Apocalypto I thought was very good.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
He was
how do you say it's one of Mel Gibson's best when all he does is tip-top work?
Yeah, he's done some. He's acted in some films I haven't cared for, but
I'm talking about direction.
His directing career. I mean, even The Patriot, which is a bit of a dumb movie, I still loved it.
He didn't direct that one. That was Roland Emmerich, because we just did a stream on that.
Hang on, did he not direct that?
No, he didn't direct that one.
Oh, that was not because that came out right after Braveheart, and it's basically the same.
I want to say
you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Roland Emmerich. Because what's shocking is Roland Emmerich is the guy who did Independence Day, Stargate, 2012, all those. So it was shocking that he actually turned in a movie that was decent.
Well, sorry, I love Independence Day.
No. Don't get me wrong. Independence Day is great. Stargate is excellent.
I like Stargate. Stargate's got some pacing issues. Watched it again recently, and it has got some pacing issues, but still very good. But so I said that I had a gripe about this film, and I still think for me, it's the one thing that lets it down. Before I say what it is there anything about the film that doesn't work for you? Is there anything that you didn't like about it?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say the cohesion between, man, the knife fight, if I'm spoiling anything, go ahead and mute this right now. But I feel like the knife fight kind of came out of nowhere between Fred Ward and Powers Booth. That was a little too immediate for me. There wasn't really too much buildup between those two characters getting it on like that, like so intimately.
Yeah.
Like maybe if one punched the other one in the head once in a while, I'd be like, okay, I could see that coming. But
it's possible that there might have been more, but it was cut,
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, there's that. And then another thing that kind of bothered me was all of a sudden Powers Booth and it's not David Carradine, it's Keith Carradine.
Keith Carradine.
Yeah, Keith Carradine. All of a sudden they were back to back and they trusted each other. And my thought was Powers Booth came off as the kind of character who trusted no one unless he was given reason to trust them.
Yeah.
And Keith Carradine's character never provided that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So those are my two biggest gripes. What are yours?
My first one is, Josh, you should never mention Taylor Swift in my chat during an intellectual film review, mate. I know you're one of my moderators, but that could be an instant demotion. There's another moderator on the Drinkers, Mr. Brown. He's actually got a stream on the same time as me. And I try to always deliberately put my streams on a different time from everybody else. Right. So anyway, but sod's law, it happened. My big gripe is this. I think the character of Coach, even though we've talked about him and what's going on with him, his segue into madness for me is way too quick, and the things he does are way too big. Now, I get it. We're kind of I can't remember the running time of the movie. I think it's around 100 minutes. So Walter Hill admits, look, the film's not very realistic. So I guess the argument is these things need to happen quickly because we need to have the breakdown and all of that. I think that stuff, and we got 11 people watching, by the way. So thanks very much for tuning in. It's nice to get into double figures.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thanks for tuning in. You got any comments or questions for either me or my guest Copa? Just stick them in the chat there. We'll get to them. That for me all happens a bit fast in the same way that your criticism about the knife fight and the aggression between those two characters is all a bit quick. I mean, I think Fred Ward does a better job of isolating himself a lot more quickly, and he's only interested in his own survival, and that's established a bit stronger. Coach's kind of, sort of descent into madness is very fast. And I remember when I was watching it as a kid, and he comes out with the Red Cross thing, and they're in a shit situation, and he knows this, and they've just bagged a whole hut with extra weapons in it and ammunition and all the rest of it, and he blows the whole fucking thing up.
Yeah, it's like totally agree. It feels doesn't it feel like it's just from one scene to the other that Coach went from freaking out that his mentor has died and father figure has died to I will avenge thee, painting the cross across his chest like he's a crusader and setting fire to this thing. Like
it felt like that should have happened later for me.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, that's in the. If we're breaking the movie down into 3 acts and you're doing that whole traditional script thing, I think that's kind of the end of the first act is him blowing up that hut.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think the end of the first act is the captain being killed, because that's about halfway into the first act.
Do you feel like that's the point of no return as well as them burning the hut? Like before they could actually talk to the Cajuns, but once they burnt that hut, it was like, okay, that's it. It's done.
because and again that comes back to the cavalry analogy I had again, that you're in foreign territory, and instead of trying to communicate or de-escalate the situation, you're just constantly escalating it. And that, I mean, I like that. Again, it's very traditional script writing, and there's a lot of good things about the script, especially for people who want to write a screenplay. This is a good example. I did Inner Space last week. I did Inner Space and Fantastic Voyage, and it was like a compare and contrast between these two shows about the inner body. And Inner Space has got a connection to this film. I forget which. It's one of the same writers or something like that. Or no, sorry, same DOP did Inner Space. That's got a very sort of typical 3-act script, raising the stakes, establish characters, set the scene, raise the stakes, etc., all of that. This script does that very well. How far you buy into that and how much that fucks with the rules of the world that we've set up is a little debatable. It does feel like too many people are a bit too stupid too quickly, but yeah, that's also part of the fun. So
Yeah, I mean, it feels like this unit is entirely a sliding scale of what men would do in this type of situation. Not saying that every unit of every military force would be like this. I'm just saying this is just a sliding scale of what men would do, which is anywhere from step up and become the leader and try to lead men out of a terrible situation, to losing their mind, to being fearful and killing anything that moves in front of them. I think that is recognizable, but I do agree with you. There needs to be some kind of slow progression to some of these things. Like, I mean, Coach knocks over everybody's boats in one scene, and then all of a sudden there's like 3 characters that are losing their mind just because they tipped over in the water, and one guy died. Understandably, traumatic event. Totally get it. But 3 guys losing their mind at once, it was kind of a little far-fetched. I think I would love to have seen. I mean, like you said, it was about 100 minutes long.
Yeah, I think
I would love to have seen another half an hour devoted to some kind of ticking down of the mentality where some of these guys are just slowly losing it. They're
Yeah,
slowly becoming a ticking time bomb.
105 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think if you were gonna sort of cut anything down, the Cajun pig roast scene, that could have all been a bit shorter, but it was nice to see it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I think
you had they slaughter a pig for real in that scene, by the way.
Oh yeah, they slaughtered 2 of them.
Yeah, so there's no line at the end of this movie. No animals were.
No, they
harmed
were
during the
severely
making of the
hurt.
film. What there is at the end of the film is a big apology, or sort of a kind of semi apology to Southern Comfort, the drinking brand.
No way, is there?
Yeah, honestly, look at the end credits of this film. I shit you not. There's a big thing about Southern Comfort, the drink, and they talk about it. Jana Catania. I don't know if that's your good lady wife.
It is.
Yeah,
that
very
is.
good.
That's my very pregnant and good lady wife.
Oh my word.
Yes.
So too much information, but anyway, no, I don't think they're planning on remaking it, and God forbid that should happen. I mean, I have to admit, I'm amazed that Walter Hill is still alive. He's been going a long time. I haven't seen his latest movie. I have seen the trailer for it. Let's talk about. We can kind of, as we wrap up, we maybe just mention some of his other work. But to finish on Southern Comfort, and before we wrap up and do a bit of plugging of your books and things, if there's a scene that you always remember in this, I'd be curious to know if it's the same one as mine. For me, it's when they wake up and they find that the bodies of the 3 people that have been killed, that they've buried, and they've given them a decent burial.
Yeah.
Have all been dug up.
So,
and they come across them in the trees. And if you watch that shot, the only one of them that you can't see is Peter Coyote, because his head is slumped like that. You know why that was? Because that's not him. It's a body double.
I was about to say, he probably wasn't there for filming that day.
No, he came in and out really quickly. They only had him for, I think it was even less than a week to shoot his scenes. So he was in and out like real fast. For you?
Yeah, that would be the scene that sticks out, because that's when it kind of hinges into the horror. It hinges from suspense to suspense horror in that aspect, because all of a sudden 3 bodies have been exhumed, even though they were shallow graves, and then made to be a reminder that they're still being watched and followed, and at any moment they could have all died, but they're toying with them.
Yeah.
So it turns into a horror film at that point.
Yeah.
You don't know where they are, and at any moment they can strike. They know they have to sleep, and they know where they're at. I would say that would be the sticking point, that scene, and the scene where they wake up once again and find Coach hung off the side of the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And of course the pig slaughter scene, but I agree with you what you said about 5 minutes ago, which is the pig slaughter scene kind of lasted a little too long. I get they were trying to do a red herring thing, and it does build the suspense that it needs to. I don't know if it needs to be that long. Do you think it needs to be that long?
No, you've got one woman in that scene who's got one line, so it's the only time there's a woman in the movie. Right. And she's like, "Oh yeah, no, you need to come and dance with me." I think she says in Cajun French or something. But I mean, I like that. I like that they were showing the culture, and it's quite funny that the PC middle classes all rose up and said, "Oh, the Cajun people are very offended about this film." But
the people asking,
Walter Hill said they loved it.
Well, first of all, think about it. Especially here, us Yanks, we don't have too many films about the Cajun culture, and it totally makes sense to have this type of film devoted to the Cajun culture, because all of a sudden these Americans are strangers in a strange land. I mean, it totally builds up that aspect of being strangers in their own country, because not many of us Americans understand Cajun culture. So it's a foreign concept to us. And so to be trapped by them is also a foreign thing as well.
It was interesting to notice that the original title for this film on the script was The Prey. And of course, we've just had the Predator Prey movie.
Oh yes.
And I'm kind of glad that they didn't go with that title. I think Southern Comfort's a good title. It's quite beguiling as to what's actually gonna happen.
Yeah, what's the title? What's the subtitle to this film, if I remember correctly, or I'm paraphrasing? It's something along the lines of like the most hospitable people in the world, unless you're an outsider or something like that.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, and I think actually Brian James's character as good as says that line in the movie.
Yeah,
You know, you're in our world now.
Mm-hmm.
Words to that effect. So, what would you give this out of 10 now?
Solid 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd give it a solid 7.5. There's a couple of things that let it down for me, but definitely a solid 7. I would recommend it.
Absolutely.
It's quite a bleak movie. It's not a date film, particularly if your date is a vegetarian. Don't think she wants to see real pig guts spilling out.
Yeah, there's real pig slaughter, and I would say, especially with that ending with the pig slaughter scene, if that's not your thing, make sure you have an eye bleach film already available for you to watch.
Do you remember TK Carter's got a line where they first come across that first encampment where the fish is hanging up on the hook, and there's a slaughtered deer, and he goes, "Hey man, who murdered Rudolph?"
Right.
You know, again, you can tell that that's got to have been an improv of his, because somebody wouldn't put that in the script because they wouldn't think Rudolph. It just wouldn't be in there. I'm sure he must have come up with that himself. So we do recommend this. I'm your wife's put, don't watch it pregnant. Well, I mean, it will also make you want a pork roast. So if you are,
it is true. Hey, when they had that pig on a rotisserie, that looked delicious. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it did look good. You had all the bits of the crackling dropping off it at one point, and I was thinking, oh man, and I'm going for a Sunday roast tomorrow, so I think I might have to order pork. So guys, if you've got any questions, whack them in the chat now, because wrapping up, less than 10 minutes to go. Josh has asked one. So Lance and Copper, what was your favorite movie of last year? So we're talking 2022. And what are you looking forward to this year? I like the look of 65. I like the look of 65 as well.
I like the look of 65 as well.
Super Mario Brothers. I mean, it looks fun. I'm really not asked about sort of computer game IPs particularly, and also that wasn't my game, although I was very familiar with it. I didn't hate the Bob Hoskins movie, actually. There's a scene where there's all these lizards stuck in an elevator dancing, and that scene really sticks in my head. I can't remember why, but I need to rewatch the Bob Hoskins. That would be a fun
you're
one.
admitting a lot today to me.
I didn't say it was a good film. I just remember when I went to the cinema, I didn't hate it. Yeah, and don't forget, I was a lot younger when I watched it then. I'm pretty sure it's probably not stood the test of time.
Okay, I would suggest you watch it again before you see it.
But hey, sometimes it might be pretty funny to do a stream on a movie that is so bad that it's bad and not really good.
Yeah, that's gold.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the best film I saw last year, or one of the ones that was the best for me, probably he mentioned The Northman. I think it's a toss-up between, in terms of cinematic fun experience, got to be Top Gun Maverick.
100%.
But in terms of like, my God, that was a good film, and it stuck with me for a long time afterwards. Probably All Quiet on the Western Front, which I saw on Netflix and is at the cinema up the road from me, and I'm probably going to go and see it there. What about for you?
Okay, so yeah, with All Quiet, I kind of I liked All Quiet a lot. I think it's the second best All Quiet version, but I still don't think that All Quiet that just came out on Netflix beats the silent film. That silent film is just perfection.
Yeah, no, and you can get those people watching, you can get that version on Blu-ray. It has been released.
Yeah. Best film cinematically, like going to the theater and sitting down and watching, for sure, 100%. Can't fault anybody for saying it. Top Gun Maverick.
Just got chills, man, when I sat down and watched that film. And they had the same logo, same font came up. And I was sitting in the same cinema that I saw it at in 85 in virtually the same thing.
way.
Yeah. They'd redone it.
That is fantastic.
That screen wasn't an IMAX back then, but it's now an IMAX. But Empire Screen 1. And I'm in the middle. And you just heard that. Dun, 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 dun. Down, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm in 1985."
It's happening. Yeah. So I'd say
good.
that's the greatest cinematic experience that you could have going to the theaters. I would say the best streaming film of last year. Like, I know it wasn't streaming in India, but here in the States, it was streaming. Triple R was by far one of the most fascinating films I ever watched.
Yeah,
it made me want to dive into Indian cinema. If you go to my page, I did exactly that. I watched Triple R, and then I watched SS Rajamouli. I did a couple reviews on Bahubali as well.
I haven't seen that.
So Bahubali is same director as Triple R, but it's in a historic fantasy genre.
Right.
And once again, it's fantastic. This one's a little bit of a slow burn, sort of like Lord of the Rings. But you come out of it going, what did I just watch? Like, especially part one. Part one just gets so crazy at the end.
It's 2 movies?
Yeah, so the part one is called The Beginning, and then part 2 is called The Conclusion. And so part 1 is kind of the origins of who Bahubali is. And I'm not kidding you. They have the last 30 minutes is a battle that I wouldn't say rivals Return to the King's battle, but it for Indian cinema, it rivals it. So but I would say the best movie overall of last year was, in fact, Northman. I have to agree. It had everything going on inside of it. It was just a great amalgamation of what a movie experience should be. I'm impressed by that film. I've watched it about 3 times now. Each time I get something new out of it. It's going to be one of those championed movies over the years to come. I am looking forward to 65. I think that's a fantastic looking film. I think it's finally we get something, an IP that is original for the screen. It's not written from a comic book or adapted from anything. It's its own thing. It doesn't look like it's woke at any moment. It just looks like a dude trying to survive from 65 million years ago. And that's it. And that's all I want. And then
I like the look of 65. No, sorry, just agreeing with you. I like the look of 65. I think it looks great.
Good. It looks so great. Fun. That looks fun. And yes, I want to see John Wick. You know, I'm a dude. Of course, I want to see John Wick. But there's something about 65 where I'm like, God, that just looks refreshing. That looks like why we all sat down in the cinema 22 years ago. Where it's like, hey, there's this new interesting looking thing. Let's go watch it and kill 2 hours. So there's that. And then, but the film I'm definitely looking forward to, bar none, I think it's going to be the best film of the year, just from what I've been seeing, is Oppenheimer. I think that's going to be the film to beat, is Oppenheimer. Christopher Nolan, I think will knock it out of the park. I mean, who sits there and thinks I'm going to do a practical effect of a nuclear weapon detonating? It's just a phenomenal thing to watch being made, and I can't wait for that to come out.
Did he actually do that for the filming?
Yeah, he actually did practical effects for the detonation of the atomic bomb.
Hey man, so look at this. With the powers of modern technology, gonna have an unannounced quick guest is gonna pop in and say hello. Right. It's Matthew Holmes from Australia.
Whoa!
Of the Outcast Creative. Look at that, man. I mentioned the director and now he's here. Such is the power of our channel. So, Matt, can you hear us all right? Your audio's messed up, mate. I'm getting like feedback. So look at that. I gave him such a great intro, but now we can't hear him. Do you want to try logging out and logging back in again? Yeah, because I'm just getting this really bad feedback. I don't know what's going on there. Let me take you out the stream for a sec. Just try. Well, There he is. See, living proof that I do know the guy.
Okay.
With his very impressive Blu-ray collection
I
behind.
saw that.
But he's got a feedback going on there. I don't know why, because I've had him on before and I've never had
He you know what? He might have the stream on in the background and it's looping into his microphone.
Oh yeah, Matthew, if you've got you probably still got the stream on the computer. Hit the mute button on that, and let me try bringing you back in. Got Tyler the Redbeards just popped in, and Canoli Sasquatch. What a great name! I love some of the names here. Matt, I'm going to add you back in. Let's try again. No, it's still there. What's going on with that? He's fiddling around with technical thing. All right, I'll keep him out for a sec. Just to get him to say hello, and he can tell us where he's at with his movie. So for those people who were in earlier, Matthew Holmes is a director. He's done about 4 films, and he's on his 5th, or he's done 3 and he's on his 4th. I forget which. And he's got a great film called The Cost coming out. We are going to do a stream about that as well. Copa's just popping off for a sec. Matt, you there?
Hello.
Oh, mate. Yeah, it's working. There you go.
Hooray. I'm on the headphones. So forgive me for having the headphones in.
No worries. So, okay. All right. I think we resolved the issue. So,
indeed.
So guys, this is Matthew Holmes, whose work I was praising earlier, who is a really good friend of mine. And I just thought it'd be nice to get him in for a second and see how it's all going, because he's on post-production. He's on the editing process of Fear Below. He's on like day 57 of 140. No, it's not that. Oh, if only you did have that much time.
Yeah, but, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, no, yeah. I'm a couple of weeks into the edit at the moment. So, yeah, it's I'm right in the thick of it. So,
yo, dude, how you doing?
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm well.
Nice to meet you as well.
Matt, I'll have you back on to talk about The Cost again when it's going to be released. And this is Copa, who's a great guy, and we got very similar taste in movies. And I think Matt's not a massive fan of Avatar either, so he's probably more in your camp, Copa, for that. But
Matt, I like you already.
But Matt, do you want to just very, very briefly, just tell our guys watching a little bit about how you came to shoot The Cost, and then how that led to Fear Below and these 2 films that you're going to have coming out pretty close together, I think, while I dash to the bathroom.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Well, The Cost was, it was born out of a bit of frustration, because I've been trying to get films up for a while, and every single project that was sort of in the $3 or $4 million range, they kept falling over. We couldn't get finance for them. And the years were going by, and I hadn't made a film since Ben-Hur, and I thought, I've got to make another movie. So it really was just, what have I got around me? What have I got access to? What can I do really cheap? And what can I do with a really small cast? So I just wrote this script with my co-writer, Gregory Moss. And yeah, we just knew our limitations, and we came up with a really interesting story, a really interesting what if, and just got some friends together, crew of 12 people, cast of 3 or 4, and just went out and just started filming it on our, we had a few small investors, but it was just all volunteer, and we just went out and started doing it. And just as we started filming, lockdown hit. So we had to maneuver the shoot throughout the lockdowns. When we were locked down, we had to just down tools and wait, and then they would open up a bit, and we'd go out and film some more, and then we'd lock down, and then we'd wait, and we'd do some editing, do some rewriting, and then this went on for over a year. So it was, yeah.
So you didn't have to do any kind of guerrilla style filmmaking? Did you pull permits and stuff like that, or did you just go, all right, we're going to go shoot out here before the cops find us?
Yeah, we did a lot of that. We didn't.
Okay. Good. I love it.
Yeah, we did a lot of that.
That's why we're called the Outcasts, you see.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. It's not over here. It's not in Australia. It's not like it is in the States. It's not. They don't. You can sort of get away with it. They're a little bit lax. We did one night. We were filming, out on a public street. Lights, everything. It was pretty late, and this cop just came right up to us, pulled up, whined down his window. "What you doing, guys?" And we just went, "Oh, we're just shooting a YouTube video." Okay. And then they took off.
Yeah, you could get away with that. Smart.
So
smart. You were saying you have like a skeleton crew of a skeleton crew.
Yeah,
Right?
very
like
small
about
crew.
12 people.
Yeah, not even. It was very, very small.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there was very few permits. We only got permits for one particular place, but the rest was all private properties and just go out and just shoot where you can. And yeah, it was real guerrilla style, real rough. But we just embraced the roughness of it. And the surprising thing is, it turned out to be probably the film I'm most proud of in all of the movies.
Yeah, and I was actually the first person to watch it. Saw a rough cut. Yeah, a rough cut. I think there was a couple of shots still to be inserted. So had some of Matt's storyboards saying car pulls up at driveway here or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was yeah, you saw it before it even hit before we even got the final cut. But yeah, that was good.
I gave a little bit of feedback and but it's a great, the performances of the three guys are just, and Matt's script are what make it, and it's just an incredible movie. It's a small film, but it's got a massive heart, and the energy in it is just unreal, guys. So definitely check that out and check out Matt's other work.
Hoping the trailer drops next week. It's not up to me. It's up to the production, the people who have the rights to it. So
isn't your first film Twin Rivers on YouTube? People can watch it for free.
No, I don't think it's for free. I think it is on YouTube. And I know it's on Amazon as well. You can see my first, and in Australia, I know Ben Hall's on Amazon. I'm pretty sure you can see Ben Hall in most countries somewhere if you dig around for it. But hopefully the cost will join them soon and be available for people. It's one of those films I just really want people to see. We've only had 3 public screenings, and so far, everyone's like the audience reception to the film has been amazing. So it's been really, really cool.
Now, can I ask you something? Are you anything like me when you do storyboards? Is it stick figures, or do you actually have someone draw it for you?
Oh no, I got storyboards. Why don't I show you? Hang on, I'll just grab
show me
right now.
Dude, Matt is a great artist. In fact, it was one of his crowdfunder for Ben Hall when he was doing it as a short. He had these animatics for various sequences, and I was going, oh man, this guy really knows his shit, and he's got a very clear vision for this film. I can't find the video that we made of that, Matt. Where
these
are
the camera. Dude,
look at those dudes.
What?
So those are those are the storyboards that I do for my films.
His storyboards are like graphic novel quality, man.
What? Where do you have the time to do this for your storyboards?
Well, I had a lot of time in lockdown for these. But I mean, for me, they're pretty rough, but they tell the story.
Yeah,
they're pretty rough.
I know, right, Copa? I know. I'm like, they put my efforts to shame, man.
Wait, here's my storyboard right here. Oh, you can't see it.
No, I can't.
There
it is. Yeah.
That's how I storyboard. Your little thumbnails on the screenplay.
Look, whatever gets you by, if storyboards like that get you by, great. There's no problem with that. I just really like to visualize the movie, and I really want people to. It's sort of like directing the movie for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I storyboarded the cast, when I put the movie together, like pre-made jigsaw pieces, everything just clicked into place. So the edit was a joy. And what's happened on Fear Below, because we were hit, like Lance said earlier, we were hit by incredible record-breaking rain and floods in our first and second weeks of the shoot, and we had to evacuate the town that we were staying at. Government orders. It robbed us of a week of filming, and I had to try to. Then I was shooting off of my storyboard because I couldn't shoot the board anymore because I didn't have enough time to shoot all those shots. So now I'm editing Fear Below, and I feel the lack of having shot my board because I just didn't get the coverage. And so to me, it's a big lesson, like never always shoot your storyboard. If you get some bonus stuff, great. If you have to combine a couple of shots, that's fine, but stick to your board. Otherwise you're in real trouble.
But let me ask you this. How much of improvisation do you allow for your DP to play with? Or do you stick strictly to the storyboard and that's it?
No, it's always a collaboration. I always find it. I always listen to what the DOP's got to say. I always say, look, I need this piece of the puzzle, and I may have drawn it as a wide or a mid or a low, but he might go, actually, you know what, this is probably better around the side, and then he'd show me, and I'll go, that's great. It's still telling the story. So yeah, no, I definitely, with all my DOPs, I always make sure that they have input, and they'll bring great ideas that I just didn't think of. Same with actors. Like on the cost, I had the script, but the actors, I gave them free rein to sort of make it their own as well. So they would take a paragraph of like a speech, and they would go, well, I've done some editing on it, and I think I should say it this way. And as long as they are hitting the story points and it's still true to the character, it's like, well, that's great. That's your way of doing it. Let's do it.
Yeah, they were terrific. Those three guys. Well, look, we're gonna have you back, Matt, to talk about the cost when we know we've got a more international release date for it.
Yeah, and when there's a trailer that can,
a trailer that we can show people. I'm also due to do a stream with you about something. I'm trying to remember what we said we were going to do. Wasn't it a top 10? Some kind of top 10?
Yeah, we're going to do a top 10, or was it about other Walter Hill films, or
something like that. We'll come back to that. So Copa, you can always come on that one as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna, before we get Matt, stay on. You can plug your stuff before I wrap up. Just gonna tell you 3 films that I'm definitely gonna do a retro review on, and I could not have picked 3 more contrasting films, right? So I'm definitely, let me get the share here. I'm definitely gonna do a retro review on my favorite guilty pleasure, but let's not talk about that one first. Going to do The Player, which is a great film about, what it's like in Hollywood, and is probably one of Tim Robbins' finest performances outside of Shawshank Redemption. Fred Ward from Southern Comfort is also in the movie. Really good film. One of Robert Altman's best. Incredible opening long shot sequence that goes on for ages. But obviously, that would be topped by Chuck Norris, Invasion USA. This is an absolutely batshit crazy film.
It really is.
But I love it.
I love it too.
And any film that's got D-Day landing craft landing on the beaches of Miami in the middle of the movie is going to get a thumbs up from me. And it's also got my favorite bad guy actor of all time, Richard Lynch, who I'm just going to see if there's a picture of him. I mean, there he is in the top left there. He was the villain in Sword and the Sorcerer. I've had one of the cast of Sword and the Sorcerer, Anthony DeLongis, who's now a stuntman. I've had him on the channel. You can check out the interview I did with him. That scene, by the way, is great at the beginning of the movie. Let's not spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. Also out in the 80s was the film that kind of gave me an insight into what hip hop and the growing of hip hop in New York was like. And I had the double album vinyl, which is worth a fortune now, but I sold it to somebody in the 90s, and that's Beat Street. And Matt probably hasn't even seen this. The Blu-ray of this is actually on its way to me now. It's got a very young Ray Dawn Chong in it. One of the kids that was in this movie was killed in a police shooting as well, not that long ago, which is really tragic. But it's a very interesting film with a lot of interesting background stories to how it got made. Fantastic music in it, and it very much encapsulates New York in that time. This, I think, those 3 films probably goes to show what an eclectic taste I have in movies. But so I'm gonna do streams and all of those. I'm sure you won't all be queuing up for Beat Street, but everybody's going to want to do Invasion USA, of course. So Copa, your links are already down there for anybody that wants to subscribe. You've also got a book out. Show us the book quickly.
Here, I'll show you the book quickly. It's called Why Not Wichita. It is a sci-fi adventure fantasy. It's a novella. It's not that long. It's about 94 pages long. You can find it on Amazon and paperback.
It's one of Matt's scripts, that is.
Well, yeah, I'm originally a scriptwriter, so switching over during COVID was not too hard. It doesn't really necessarily read as a script, but it is as short as a script. That's for sure.
Show us the thing with the eyes with the.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I designed this cover myself because it's COVID. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so when you open it up and you're reading it in the airport, it looks like they're looking at you anyways. So
I think that's pretty.
It
clever.
also, I have my heroine. She's running away from all the guys that are chasing her, but really, if you pull it back, it looks like eyelashes. So.
And it's funny that me and Copa have only just met, but we've both written sci-fi novels about spaceships, and there's mine.
Yeah.
On Amazon, and the second
I was
one
going to say,
in the
is the Wichita, is that a sci-fi, a UFO thing, is it?
Well, it's not a UFO thing. It's a futuristic thing. It's a sci-fi thing. They definitely there's interstellar travel in later books and stuff like that. But in this one, it's just grounded on Earth because it's her story of she's a protector of a city, sort of like if you think of a Jedi. But she just protects this city called Metro City. It's in northern Texas. And she's so tired. She's so desperate for just a break. Her cup's a little full. So what she wants to do is she tells everybody she's going to take a nice little vacation, maybe 5 or 6 days. She'll be right back. But nobody wants to let her leave. So she actually legitimately physically has to fight to get to her vacation.
Right.
So that's what the first book is about.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds like me going through this Fear Below production right now.
Yeah, right.
All I want to do is go on vacation, but they're like, "No, you got to finish the film." I'm like, "I got to go on vacation."
Yeah,
exactly.
And Matt's actually coming to stay with me in July, and we're almost certainly going to do a couple of streams sitting here together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Copa, your good lady wife if she wants to know more about the knickknacks in the background, there's a lot of Jerry Anderson stuff. Thunderbird 1, Thunderbird 3, a Space 1999 Eagle, 2 Thunderbird 3s actually, 0X and some other things, some Lego and various bits and bobs. Matt, you mentioned Ben Hall's kind of all over the place for people to get.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's available in a couple of different languages on Blu-ray and DVD. It's in most countries. I think it's been released in about 22 countries, so it is available. If you hunt it down.
And the cost, you're still waiting for somebody to pick it up for like an international.
Yeah, we've got international distribution, an international distributor, Archstone Entertainment, and they've got worldwide rights. So they've just they just released it at the Berlinale Film Festival. And so we're waiting for some offers to come in and start to get released around the world. So, right. I really hope people enjoy the costs, and I hope they get a chance to see it.
All right. Well, listen, mate, I know you got to get back to your editing, so I'll take you out now. But thanks so much for popping in. I just thought, hey, you know what? I'll send him the link just see if he can come in and say hello. And
no, it's caught me on a good morning.
No, that was absolutely, and I know a lot of Copa's family came in to watch this, and they've all subbed to my channel, which is really lovely of them. Very, very, we like that mutual support here. Matt, I'll take you out. I'll see you again soon. No doubt I'll probably talk to you in about 10 hours, as is normally the case.
No worries, man.
Yeah. Hey, nice meeting you.
So brilliant. So fantastic stuff. I will be back next Saturday for another one of these. I'm doing a Yellowstone stream. That's what Matt's supposed to be on. Just took him off, and I'm doing a stream on Yellowstone, 1883 and 1923. Are you a fan?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I actually have some friends that are working on some of those shows.
So I have 1883 right here, and I sent a message to Taylor Sheridan on Facebook because they've ramped up all the social media for Yellowstone recently, and they've created Facebook accounts for everybody. But I could tell it was an official account. And I wrote to him and said, really love your show. And actually your shows, your worlds are getting me through a pretty tough time right now. He replied.
Did he?
He came back to me, and it was definitely him. It was not a PA, because he asked me questions that a PA would not ask me.
Right.
Like what I did for a living, and where was I from, and why did I have an 8-hour time difference, and this kind of thing. And a PA just would have said, thank you very much. Here's the copy and paste. And I said, I couldn't believe you replied. And he said, oh, you caught me a good window right now. Just like because I think he's just come off the.
Hey, you never know. But that dude is hot. And when I mean hot. He's red.
I mean, but what I like about his stuff is, it's going to be of a certain quality. Like, okay, not everybody likes Tulsa King. I did like it. It's still a good show. Good script, really well made, nice characters. Yellowstone, 1923 and 1883. My God, the production value on these shows. I mean, that shot in 1923 where Harrison Ford turns his horse onto the road, onto the high street, and you've got the boxing match going on, and you've got the women protesting against alcohol, and there's all these little scenes being played out with all the background guys, and it's the whole thing is an allegory for the ending of the West, and look at all the technology that's coming, and now everybody's getting electric lights, and it's just fantastic. The side quest in Africa is a bit annoying, and get home already. Yeah. But I get why that's being strung out for a big payoff, and I'm sure it will come. But I'm glad to hear you're a big Taylor Sheridan fan, because
absolutely. I've been a fan of his since like even before Sicario.
Right.
But I would say I love Sicario, and then he did Hell and High Water, and that's where I was like, all right, I'm solid. I'm on board with this guy.
That's a great film, and he also, I don't think he directed it, but I think he wrote this. Now, did he either co-direct or he wrote the script for Wind River?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great movie. So, of course, now I'm chatting with him. I thought, fuck it, what have I got to lose? Will you come on the show?
Hey,
I'd love to interview you. And he said, well, I'm quite busy, but let me think about it. He didn't say no. So
okay, there you go.
Watch this space. You never know. I mean, I pride myself on interviewing people in the industry and asking them the right questions that everybody wants to ask. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Well, when you work in the industry, you know what to ask as well.
That is
not
true.
Just the surface level stuff.
Well, listen, you and I were definitely destined to meet. You're welcome on my channel anytime. And like I say, I do Wednesdays and Saturdays at the minute. Anytime you can jump on the weekly roundup, which is kind of a school night for you. But if you're able to come on it, by all means, come on it and just talk about the stuff that you've seen in that preceding 7 days, what shows you've watched, whether it's reruns of Dallas or I Love Lucy or the latest Netflix crime documentary. There are so many of those to choose from. As your wife says, it never hurts to ask. Listen, Cap, you seem like you've got a really lovely, supportive family. Congratulations on your pending birth of your child. Do we have names picked out?
Yes, we do. Her name is Cecilia.
Cecilia. That's very British. That's like someone who was first class on the Titanic and probably survived.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, so it's a good name to you want your daughter traveling first class.
I want my daughter in the life raft instead of
in any life raft scenarios that may present themselves.
That's right.
All right. Well, look, guys, this stream's gone on 2 hours 27 minutes. It's flown by, but it's I didn't realize we'd gone on quite so long. Listen, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Would have been 60 minutes if I hadn't had you. And your clan has been great. I've had a few of my regulars pop in as well. It was great that we got Matthew on. That was a really nice surprise. Glad that I was able to do that for you while you were on as well. And guys, we're going to end the broadcast, and I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to shoot off and go and get something to drink. But I'll say what I always say at the end of my streams, which is if you haven't spoken to someone you really care about and you haven't told him you love him in a while, pick up the phone and do it now. Or if it's an unreasonable hour where you live, do it tomorrow. But just make sure that you do it, because you never know when it's going to be too late. All right. So thanks to my co-host, Copa Catania. Don't forget to like and subscribe to his channel as well. It's growing also. And if you want to come on and talk about a creative project you're doing, or you've got a channel and you'd like to come and co-host an episode, depending on what we're talking about, get in touch with me. And I'd love to have you on. And White Bear, thanks very much for coming on. Is that someone who was in Cocaine Bear? It certainly looks like it from the profile picture.
Yeah, he is the original Cocaine Bear.
That's what I thought. Okay, fantastic. Well, guys, we'll see you all again real soon. And hopefully I'll be back at the same time next Saturday. And I'm sure Copa will be on more shows and episodes. So fantastic. And let me know if you want me on your channel anytime. I'll be there.
100% you'll be on my channel.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a good night, everyone.
See you
Cheers,
guys.
Bye.